baby trees.
Bonsai. Bonsai.
Bonsai. Bonsai.
Close enough.
The Black Pondo Podcast.
Bonsai. Bonsai.
Bonsai.
Bonsai.
Bonsai.
Yeah.
The Black Pondo Podcast.
Fantastic. All right. Well, what are we working on here?
Let's see. We got, well, there's more options, but that's the cognac you had last time.
Okay.
And that's a Japanese whiskey if you want to try that a little bit. That one's really good. Then I have some others if you want to try something else, but I figured you can try this first.
What are you going with?
Actually, this is the end of another bottle.
Okay.
It was just the end of that. And it's a scotch
Very nice.
that I'm having. So
Why don't I try this
yeah.
single malt Japanese whiskey aged 12 years?
Okay.
Awesome.
Yamazaki.
All right. So do you pour it on the ice?
Yeah.
And is it like hardcore whiskey drinkers, they don't use ice? Like
I don't know of hardcores, but I know in a lot of people when they have scotch, they'll have a little water with it sometimes.
Okay.
And so for me, what happens is that with the ice, if it melts a little bit, then it's like adding water and it knocks down the alcohol taste. And you can still, but it doesn't dilute the other stuff.
Okay.
So that's why they add the water. But it's kind of hot, so that just do the ice thing. I'm not that much of a snob about it.
Got it. I was wondering if you put ice in there, like, is that kind of like you're a bitch?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I think generally
Okay.
legit drinkers, they'd say, hey, that's your preference, that's fine. I would say that if you are having something special, I would maybe recommend just have it straight so you know exactly what it is first, and then, okay, adjust it according to what you want. Now, I would be offended if you wanted to mix like Coke with it, or, Sprite or something. Then
Got it,
we can use different whiskey for that.
Okay. Nice. Awesome. It shows you how much I know about whiskey.
No, I don't know that much either. So, I mean, this stuff I heard along the way, right? So,
Cheers.
oh, cheers.
Thank
yeah.
you so much for doing this, Peter.
Yes,
Really
yeah,
appreciate it.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. All right, good.
Good stuff.
Good.
Awesome. I was wondering, I was thinking earlier while we were on the car ride, when I forgot my phone at the Mexican place and had to go back. I'm sorry about that. I was thinking about the fact that I don't love to tell people about my job or what I do.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because it's hard to describe to someone that doesn't really know about
Oh, yeah.
the industry that I'm in.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was
I
thinking,
understand that. Huh?
like, what's the conversation like? And I know you work 7 days a week, 365, but for non-bonsai people, I gotta imagine that's not like the most fun conversation explaining what you do. So I gotta think that,
Yeah.
like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it varies. It varies. I mean, sometimes when I talk to people and I've met them for the first time, and I tell them I do bonsai, it's funny because back in the days when I was doing it as a hobby, or even just starting to do it as a profession, people would ask me, "Well, what do you do?" And in the beginning, I was a little. I don't know why, but I was a little bit embarrassed because it sounded funny, right? Especially when somebody says, "Well, I'm an artist." It always sounds. I don't know what it sounds like, but it sounds funny.
Maybe
It just
a little
sounds.
pretentious.
Yeah, right. And it shouldn't, right? It's saying that shouldn't sound that, but for some reason it sounded that way. So I always felt funny saying that I'm a bonsai artist, but I'm okay saying it now. And then people are usually either they're like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of bonsai," or some people are like, "What is that?" And I tell them about it. The people who don't know, or the people that know, then usually their second question is like, "You can make a living doing this?" I was like, yeah, I do for a living. There's not many of us. I do make a living doing it, and I love doing it and all that stuff. So, but generally, most people have a reference to it. Either movie references or they've seen it somewhere. Very few people actually end up saying, "Oh, I've never heard of that. What is that?" but a good number of people generally know what it is, right? Uh,
I always go, "Oh, yeah, I'm really into bonsai." And they go, "What's that?"
oh
And I go,
yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
bonsai."
bonsai. Yeah, yeah. There you go. There you go.
That's how I
Uh,
always say it.
that's a good point. That reminds me one time when I was in Minnesota, we had a workshop in this arboretum of some sorts, and we were using one of the rooms, and a lady just walked across and just peeked in and saw us and looked in and said, "What are you guys doing?" "Oh, we're doing bonsai." And she was like, "I think you're mispronouncing it. It's bonsai." That's what she was telling us. We're like, "Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, that's what we're doing."
I love it. That's awesome. Love it. That's so good. Very nice. Very nice. Did your parents approve right away, or was that an awkward conversation, like, the first time you told them, "Hey, I might wanna do bonsai?"
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Both my parents' reaction and my good friends, my best friends when I growing up with, especially in high school. My parents, they were okay with it. It wasn't that shocking because I was already doing it as a hobby. And then when I was working at the car dealership, at the Ford dealership, and I was doing bonsai on the side, I started teaching it a little bit on the weekends. So it wasn't like out of nowhere. They knew. Of course, as all parents are, especially like Asian parents, right? They want to make sure you're doing at least you're making a living or something that you're okay financially, especially. And so when I told them, yeah, I'm gonna go to Japan, and my parents were actually quite good about it. There was no like falling out or anything like that. I quit my dealership job because I wasn't too happy with it, and I thought it was going to be a long conversation. I just talked to my dad, and I was like, I need to talk to you about something.
Yeah.
And I said, I think my job is turning me into a bad person. I remember this. And he looked at me and he said, if you're not happy doing it, then you got to make a change,
Yeah.
right?
That's awesome.
And the cool thing about it, and I'll never forget it, is I then told him, I said, well, this is the plan, and if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to fixing cars, right? And he says, Peter, if you're going to do this, never have that as a backup plan. You're either going to do it or you're not, right?
Burn the
If you're
boats.
going to do it, then there's no falling back on this because it's just going to hold you back, right? I was really surprised when he said that. He says, if you're going to do it, go for it all the way. Don't half-ass it in a way, right? Which is great. So it ended up being a great conversation, so it wasn't a huge falling out. Which then leads me to my buddies. Now, my buddies, I told them, and they were like, "Oh, cool!" They were really good about it. And then I went to Japan. I did all that. I came back. Uh, I started working, and then everything's okay. We reminisce about it, and we're talking about it. And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, so and so years ago, I went." And they were like, "Yeah, we thought you were crazy." I was like, "Some friend you guys are. You didn't even say anything." Because I had a good paying job, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, "You just walked away from a great paying job," and I was like, "You should have told me this back then." You should- But it all worked out. I thought it was funny later when they told me that. They were like, "Yeah, we couldn't believe it." I
Yeah.
was like, "You didn't even stop me."
I love it. That's awesome. That's so funny. Cool. Well, I would I haven't caught up with you for a little while. We chatted I haven't caught up with you since you've been to Japan, so
Oh yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
hoping to kind of bounce around
Okay,
and ask you a few different things. I wanted to hit on maybe
okay,
Japan, do a little bit of technical kind of stuff. I wanted to talk about Japanese aesthetics,
okay.
and some other topics. But I guess how was the trip to Japan? Did you have a good time?
It was great. It was great. I took a number of people went with me, and then they did their own thing also. But we were mainly focused on hanging out together during the Koku Fu show. It being the 100th, a lot of people were there. It was a great show. I mean, it was. It's kind of funny saying it was like too great that it became a problem because it was so busy.
Uh,
And so it was just so packed, it's hard to appreciate the trees. And it seemed like normally there'd be normally I think there's about 120 trees per show. This time there was about 180 trees per show. So and it's not like the facility got bigger. So they really squeezed those trees in, and some of those trees were like big trees.
Yeah.
So, they didn't necessarily have the proper spacing, the ideal spacing, of course. But, it is what it is. I think it being 100, a lot of people wanted to participate. And then people from around the world went. So it just kind of became this super busy thing. It did work out good if we showed up like later in the day and there was less of a line.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit hard to appreciate the trees just because it was so busy. And then people would try to take pictures and all that. And yeah,
For
you're,
sure.
you're not standing next to the tree and like examining it, right? You got to move.
Yeah.
You're like in the way now.
Totally.
Yeah.
Did you get to do or check out some other nurseries outside of the show?
Yeah, one day we went to Omiya Village I was showing the folks the bonsai museum there, which I swear there was no pond in the middle before, so I think that was a new addition. So it was pretty cool, and there's really nice trees. There wasn't a lot of people there with the day that we went. I think it was like a Tuesday or something. And so after that, we went to some of the historic nurseries that have been there for like almost 100 years. Right?
Yeah.
The nursery was there when they first kind of put together that cooperation of nurseries and the guidelines and all that stuff. So we walked around and hit a couple of those. So that was really cool. So some are no longer there,
Yeah.
but it was nice. So we saw some nurseries there. I don't know all the names of the one. There was a little map that we had. And then other than that, then we went to the nursery I studied at, which is Aichi-en in Nagoya. That was a later day. Huh?
Yeah. Can do a little more of this.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Thank-
Have as much as you like.
Uh,
Yeah, just finish it.
so we're like, you guys are getting wild.
You guys are
over
like
here."
6-finger pour there.
There was barely any left. Cool. Did you go to the bonsai village when you were an apprentice, or was this the first time you've been to those nurseries before?
As an apprentice, I did. When I was an apprentice, we went to the bonsai museum one time with Akio and my teacher at the time. I can't quite remember if we went to any nurseries that day. If we did, it was real quick. Oh, but yeah, this time I got to kind of really walk around a little bit more. It's I've been there to the museum a couple of times now. I think the first time I went to museum, we didn't have time to walk around. I think I was part of a group, and so we got on a bus afterwards or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was nice. It was nice. I learned a lot just seeing some of these nurseries. It's very interesting.
What did they specialize in? Or
The ones that I went to, I think we went to about 3 of them. None of them. It didn't look like any of them specialized in any. One of them being Aichi-en, which is one of the more famous ones. It just seemed like they all had a variety of different things. The main difference was like some nurseries had more stuff, some nurseries were more less things. Maybe I think they were out. I mean, it is winter. Maybe they had some of the nurseries had some of them inside or something.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, there was a wide range of some nurseries. Just stuff was just packed in there, and then some were spaced apart.
Mhm.
Uh, which was great because it gave me great ideas. The last nursery, I think it's Fuyo-en. I think that's what it was called. One of the last one, but it was one of the originals. And one thing I appreciated about that nursery was that you can tell that nursery's been there for a long time. Everything is old looking. But it was interesting because there was an old but kind of neat looking, neat, like clean way of how they presented things. It was old, established, but it's not like brand new, like they just got a remodel. But it was just a clean old. I don't know. It had a good feeling, like this has been here for a long time. And I guess the clean part is that it will then be here for longer.
Mm.
It had that sense. It
Yeah.
wasn't like falling apart old, right? But it wasn't brand new. Like
Mhm.
we just started replacing benches. So
Yeah.
even simple things like, okay, you get a little rotting in the wood or something like that. Uh, there's like different versions of that. You can see stuff where in some cases you can say, okay, it's really falling apart and you push it and it just goes through. Or you see a version of it where that part has been cleaned out already and you just have a hole that's
Mm.
open.
Yeah.
So it doesn't show you, say, the it's rotting right now, but it had started rotting, but it doesn't show the day-to-day part. It shows the what is still there kind of part. So it had that kind of feel. And also the way they place their trees is that they really space their trees apart,
That's nice.
which is really nice. From a health perspective, it's great. The other part is that it made each tree look important.
Mm.
When you have a bunch of trees jammed together, they just don't look as important.
Yeah.
Regardless if they're high quality or low quality, but just the right spacing. Yeah, you
Yeah.
go too far apart, then it looks like it's empty. But
I I think it's interesting. I feel like when I first started bonsai, I really did not understand that the way that you present a tree or the space that the tree is in really impacts how good the tree looks.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
for example, today you and Travis were working on your trident. You pop it up on a solid backdrop,
yeah, yeah,
and it's got lots of space around it, and it just it just like makes you it just like blew me away
yeah,
all of a
yeah,
sudden where it's
yeah.
on the
It's
bench
interesting.
still looks awesome,
Yeah,
but it's just like gets to that next level when it's
yeah,
displayed in a certain way.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, one of those last nurseries where it's real spaced apart. I was like, I would love my nursery to feel like that.
Mm,
Old, established, not brand new, but clean, somewhat organized. Things are spaced apart. It just looks like, yeah, this is what I do. This is important to me, right? It looks important. There's a bunch of weeds around, stuff like that. Or at least there's not a lot of weeds that we consider weeds, but there's established good weeds around. Right?
yeah,
You know?
accent plants.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's good weeds or good accents.
Yeah,
Bad weeds are like, oh no, which one's good, which one's bad?
nice. It would be really interesting to see the bonsai village in its heyday, which I don't even know what period that was, but or even say like maybe in the '80s, it would be cool to see
Yeah, yeah.
bonsai bubble and then comparing it now.
Yeah, yeah. There was a little pamphlet, which is I'll show you that tomorrow. It was pretty cool because in the museum, when you go inside the museum, there's a little walking area. There's a whole timeline of they kind of trace back when trees were in kind of landscape type pots, which they called something else, kind of when that started and the progression of when it kind of became known as bonsai and so forth. And it's in this little booklet. So they took all that and they put it in a little booklet. So
Sweet.
it's like you can look through it, right? Uh, but yeah, when I was looking through that and then looking at other information, I think the Omiya village, it started, I think after like, there was a big earthquake and it started after that. I wanna say it was sometime in the '30s, but it's something like that. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I didn't realize that they had set up, like, rules, right? Okay, you have to allow access for visitors to come in.
Mm,
You can't build, like, a wall. It has to be a natural landscape or something like that. So they had all these requirements to be part of this kinda community. And also these requirements that made you accessible to the community, right? You weren't just all hidden 10-foot high fences protecting your art, right?
sure.
People were able to come in and enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I think last time we spoke or we podcasted, we were talking about going to Aichi-en, and it's been a while since you've been there,
Yeah.
and that you had some questions for Mr. Tanaka.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you get a chance to sit down with him very much or not so much?
Well, I was only there for a day, unfortunately, and I was helping everybody that came with me look for pots. So
Ah,
we spent like a bunch of time doing that. So I didn't get a chance to really ask him too much, unfortunately. I'd like to go back on my own time and just visit and stay at the nursery for a week or so and get a chance to chat with him a little bit more. Some of the things I did ask is what was some of the things that I asked? Now I forgot. It's been a while.
did you I think so the things that we spoke about,
Okay,
I don't
okay.
know if you uh got to talk to him about
Yeah.
this or not, but one was just the overall kind of temperature check on Japanese bonsai and where it's headed
Mm,
in
mhm.
general.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That I definitely did not get a chance to ask him. But from my observations on like he has 3 apprentices now. One, the most senior one, I met years ago, and he had just started back then in not years ago, in 2023, because I was there at TaiCon 10. Uh,
Andre?
Andre,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
nice.
So he's still there right now. I think he's on his, I guess it'd be maybe his 4th year,
Sweet.
and it sounds like he's doing well, and, I think the newest apprentice is a Japanese fella, but he wasn't there. I didn't meet him. And and there's a female apprentice that I think she knew Andre because she came from Slovakia, Czech. I think they're from Slovakia.
Okay.
Um, and she came over. She was very nice.
Nice.
So I got to meet her. She was there, and Andre was like, I think he was entertaining clients. He was in Tokyo actually,
Whoa.
whereas Mr. Tanaka was in. He didn't go to Koku Fu because he was one of the judges.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, I saw all the trees," so he didn't have to go to the show, you know. So he was hanging out at the fort. But from my observation, some interesting things that I got is that currently there are no American apprentices. Because I think we talk about, well, at some point we talked about um, needing more bonsai professionals in the U.S.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of sad to hear that. So hopefully that can change.
Yeah.
Not to say that there aren't American apprentices. Some of them have graduated too.
Mhm.
That's why some have stayed in Japan. Some have come back and they're working now. But we definitely still want more. Uh, but there are Japanese apprentices. There are apprentices from other countries. So that's good for the world.
For sure.
So that is still happening. So it's not like nobody has apprentices anymore. When I was in Koku Fu or at the Green Club, the sales area, I did notice that there I have not seen the newest crop of Japanese professionals. I didn't seem to see like a lot of younger people there. I saw the people that were there. They were the young ones when I was an apprentice, and now they're kind of the older fellows, right?
Yeah.
And they're vendoring and all that stuff. But I didn't quite see the newer. Now, it doesn't mean they don't exist. I just didn't notice that. I didn't see that. So hopefully they're around and I just didn't see them. Maybe they're back at home manning the fort again, right? And the bosses at the show, right? But yeah, other than that, I mean, other things that I've heard that now I remember I did talk to Mr. Tanaka about trees being exported out of Japan.
Mm.
And he did confirm that, yeah, a lot of trees are leaving Japan. Prices have gone up. If you want a good tree, sometimes it's hard to find. Uh, and then, rightfully so. I mean, when the tree leaves the country to get a replacement, I mean, making a tree
Yeah.
is not like overnight. It takes a long time.
It takes a little while.
So it's selling a tree, that's one thing. And then building a tree might take decades.
Yeah.
Or longer. And so I mean, it sounds like they are working on it. It's just it can't catch up with the demand of export. So it seems like a lot of trees are going all over the place.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Gotcha. Uh, was there anything at Koku Fu that you're maybe paying particular attention to this time around, or
Um,
anything stood out to you at Koku Fu?
One thing that stood out to me, well, I mean, a lot of the trees are just great. You know, deciduous, conifers, broadleaf evergreens. I mean, they had a huge variety. A lot of the deciduous trees are really good. I mean, I like deciduous trees. A number of them won Koku Fu, but a number of junipers won Koku Fu too.
Ah,
There was I can't remember if there were. I'm sure, surely there was pines that won too.
uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure. I
This
just can't remember all. This last one,
this the
yeah,
last one. Okay.
yeah, this last one. There was a lot of really big, impressive junipers, and I think that's one of the things we talked about last time.
Uh-huh.
Is that I was wondering is like, do they win? And it turns out, yeah, I was totally off. Right. I looked at some old Koku Fu books. I was like, yeah, junipers win all the time. And in this case, a number of them won, and they were just great. Just some big, you know, big big junipers with lots of dead wood. So,
Yeah.
and when they're really big, it's hard to not notice, right? It's pretty impressive. Uh, you know, versus you don't have other trees that are just that big because a lot of those junipers they're big because they were growing in the mountains, right? They collected them and then grafted them. They were all Itoigawa, so uh, and most of them are grafted with Itoigawa.
Yeah.
Because the ones that grow in the mountain is not Itoigawa. It's a different type of juniper that has bigger foliage. So, so yeah, the cool thing about that is that it made me think about, if I had like one or two of these giant, awesome junipers, I'd be good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't need like 100 of them. I need two really good ones, and I'd be like super, or even one really good one.
Uh-huh.
Like that's all you need. You never get tired. I think we talked about this last time too, right? There's those trees where you look at it, you like it, you walk by, and then there's trees that are at a level or whatever characteristic it has, you never get tired of looking at it, and you don't just walk by it anymore, right? You always look at it, you always appreciate it.
Yeah.
So those junipers reminded me of that, the ones that I saw there, especially the big ones, and you're just like, yeah, if that was in the garden, being like, why would I need more than that? It's so
Totally.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Of course, if you had more, it'd be even more amazing, I suppose, a whole army of it.
Yeah.
But that's hard, right?
I think would be very happy with quality over quantity.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. Yeah. I don't need the clutter.
Exactly. Yeah. They just take up your time.
Yeah. I want a few trees that you never get tired of looking at,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure. Awesome. Well, I had some technical type questions I was hoping we could dive
Okay.
into. And if there's anything else about your trip to Japan, I would love to hear,
Okay.
or we
Yeah.
can come back to that,
Okay.
Um, all right. Well, why don't we dive into technical stuff?
Okay.
I was curious, speaking of junipers in general, can you talk to me a little bit about your approach to styling an apex or a crown for juniper bonsai? Maybe like starting from the beginning. So first styling, or you first graft a tree.
Well, I would say developing a top, what we would say is the apex, right? The top of the tree. Developing it on a juniper is not that different than any other tree we work on. The way I see it, a lot of times people always say, I always have a hard time developing apex. That's what people will tell me all the time. And part of the reason why is in most cases, if people are learning from somebody and they're doing a workshop, usually you start working on the tree on the bottom, and then you run out of time. You never get to the top,
Mm.
so you never really talk about it. So people are kind of left on their own because they didn't get to figure out how do you do the top, right? Another issue people run into, or why they say the top is difficult, is that most of the time you get some, say, raw material, and generally raw material, the branches are leggy. Say you try to make them work, whatever you got to do. But then as you get closer to the top of the tree, legginess is much more of a penalty, right? Because it's supposed to be tight. It doesn't matter how much you try to, maybe pretzel the branch. It's just, it's worse up top in the branch. And especially if the tree is running, is raw material, because the branches on the top generally grow straight up, whereas the branches on the bottom grow kind of outwards. So if a branch is growing outwards and you bend it down a little bit, it it got a little bit longer because it was slightly up. If you get it horizontal, it's the longest. You get it angled down, it's a little shorter, right? If you can kind of picture this in your head, right? But when you have a branch on the top, it could be really long, but it looks like a top because it's just up there. And then when you bring it down and make it horizontal, it's extra long, a lot of times longer than the branches on the bottom. So people run into the issue of when they bring those branches down, they're too leggy, it doesn't work out, and then they're frustrated, right? They have to get it to back bud. If they just start cutting things off, then they have less branches. Or let's say your branches are short, but it was just growing freely, right? You bend them down to try to fill in and build this top, and essentially you just run out of branches because the tree is not fully developed. It's kind of raw, right? And so when you start moving branches down, now you have a hole in the top of the apex. And so people say, well, what do we do about that, right? And it's not a huge mystery or some magical answer. It's just you don't have enough branches. So because an apex, the top of a tree, is not some side branch that's like a pad. It's a pad that's 360 and then everything on top. So just think about how many branches you need to make a pad. You need 10 times that for the top to build the top. The key thing really is that if you have a hole, just put a branch somewhere in that hole, knowing that you'll cut it, it'll divide, and it'll fill that hole. The mistake is people try to make the top look good. They leave a hole there, and there's no branch that's going to grow into that hole because you didn't set something up, and that hole will always be there.
Okay.
All it takes is just it may not look right or look funny at the time, right? You just got to get something there. Then at least you have something to build off of. So that's the main thing, is that on an apex, it's actually quite easy to build an apex on a tree, because every tree that we have grows its own apex, regardless if we want it to or not. It's going to do it on its own, right? Trees have no problems growing on the top. Usually they don't grow lower branches that we like by themselves, right? So the main thing is, I find that in any development of trees, the top of the tree is the youngest part of the tree versus the bottom, relative to the bottom. So they have young structure, which is, it's very broom-like. The branches are very skinny, young looking. They're not bent down. They're either horizontal, slightly up, all the way up. In the development process, building an apex, usually if you try to build an apex too early, because the tree always grows on top, it hinders what you're trying to do on the bottom. So it's actually better if you don't have an apex in the beginning, because that's one less branch that's in your way. If you're trying to set up your main branch,
Okay.
you can't have this top that's trying to take over all the time. You're fighting it all the time.
Yeah.
So my advice for people out there is that if you're developing a tree, don't worry. As long as you have some foliage on top, you can build an apex off of that. The harder part is if you don't have any branches on the bottom, or they're weak, and now the top is, you're fighting the top and you're trying to keep the bottom going, but the top keeps growing on you.
Yeah.
Right. So I find apexes become more of a hinder than a help. And so if it doesn't exist, it's better. So just don't be too quick to try to set one up early. It's actually better if you don't. And this goes to not just the apex, right? That's the end of the line, the top. Right? You can apply this to the middle branches, to the bottom branches, just like when we do thread grafts on a trident maple, let's say. If I have a main branch and I don't have a branch in the middle of the tree, and I don't have a branch on the top of the tree that I need, I don't graft both of those at the same time. I graft the bottom branch first, because I can graft anytime. It's not like if I don't graft now, I can never graft. I graft the bottom branches because I need that to grow thicker. I need to grow stronger. I graft the top branch later because why would I graft the top branch that now I have to control and fight?
Because it'll block the sun.
It'll block the sun too. Yeah. So it makes no sense to do it at the same time. I mean, it's cool. You think you're trying to get ahead. Well, why can't I just do two, right? They don't have to wait. But it turns out that you can do two now, but then you're fighting an extra branch.
Yeah.
It's not like a thread graft won't take if you do it next year, right? It's going to take, right? Once you do it a couple of times, it's like guaranteed. So, you just think of, instead of just saying, okay, well, I just graft whatever I can. You come up with a strategy, right? I'm still focusing on developing the bottom. I'm short a branch on the bottom. Let's get that grafted. And then you focus on the mid areas and then the top. So you can apply the same thing because everything above what you're trying to develop on the bottom is in your way.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're focusing on apex and you're trying to grow a main branch, that apex is going to get in your way. And what's going to happen is that when you're developing the main branch, for example, before it's even done, the apex can be so big that you might actually have to cut it off because the bottom's not cooperating anymore. It's shading too much. It could be structurally great. You did a good job in developing the apex. You just did it too early. And now you're cutting it off just to rebuild the exact same thing. It's just the timing is off.
That's so interesting. And like, I know, I mean, in working with you for a long time now, I feel like you're always talking about develop and thicken those lower branches first. I heard, I think Bob,
Yeah.
he said you're a slave to your bottom branches always.
Bob Ricker?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah, you're a slave to your
He
bottom
said
branch.
you're always a slave to your bottom branches.
Yeah.
Which totally makes sense. And I think when I think about like grafting a juniper, for example,
Yeah.
I am always like, oh, well, I want to get every single graft on the tree to take right
Yeah.
away.
Mm-hmm.
But hearing you say this, it's most important that I get those bottom ones on first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And start to going. And then the apex graft could be the last
Yeah.
one, technically.
If you remember at the last expo, one of my clients showed a juniper and it won large conifer. If you can picture that tree in your head, or for people out there, if you have the book,
California juniper?
it was a California juniper Joe with Kishu
That
on
we
there.
talked about before?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
yeah. That tree, so that's what happened on that tree, right? I think it was 2 or 3 grafts that built that tree. Anyway, so there's 2 grafts, and why do we want to try to graft everything now, right? It's because grafting's difficult, or in the beginning it's difficult. So we're just like, let's get it on there, right?
Yeah.
Get them growing, right? So on that tree, they did the graft, and so there's a big cascading branch that builds like 2/3 of the tree, and that branch is like 1.5 inches thick or something like that, maybe a little thicker. And seeing the development of that tree before the lower branch was even finished, even close to finish. It still had runners that we were trying to thicken, right? These secondary pads off the main branch. The top got so big that there was a section in the back. Luckily, it was in the back that was the size of I don't know, what would this be?
Like a cantaloupe.
Yeah, it's like the size of a cantaloupe, it seemed. It was fully developed the top, and the bottom branches are still running. Because even though you're cutting it, you're not cutting it to the same spot over and over. You always keep a little bit, so it keeps expanding. And there was a whole hump that was being developed in the back that's the size of a cantaloupe that got chopped off at one point because
Yeah.
it got too big
Too big. Okay.
before the bottom got finished.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, so that was a really good example of this top didn't have to be there so early.
Uh-huh.
If they grafted the bottom branches, spent time growing that, and then grafted the top
Yeah.
3 years later, 4 years later,
Uh-huh.
it probably would have been more helpful. It just happened to work out.
Mm. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
But that totally makes sense. Shoot. Okay. Well, like on the Sierra we were working on today,
Yeah.
the lower branches took, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
apex graft didn't.
Yeah, yeah. And we're worried about, let's get a graft in there. And I mean, I totally understand too, right? Because sometimes, and you're like, oh, it's going to be a year again before we get the graft and so forth. So the main thing is that, yeah, if say it all takes, right? And it works out okay if you're grafting on the tree and you don't have to spend a lot of time thickening something,
Okay.
because that takes a long time. So, but if you do, then sometimes it gets in the way. So you have to make extra effort to like, okay,
Keep it small.
don't try to get fancy in developing the top, wiring it, stretching things out, making pad. Just try to keep it small. Sometimes you keep it small, it'll grow out, and then later it back buds. You cut to the back bud. Just keep it small. It's not going anywhere, right? You're not going to lose it.
Yeah.
Just don't start laying things out and making this canopy and your bottom branch is still sitting there trying to get thicker, right? And it's getting potentially shaded out depending on the location.
Yeah.
So yeah, there definitely no rush in the top. It'll happen. regardless if you want it or not, it'll happen.
Yeah. Okay. So one question I have is, and I think I know the answer to this question now. I think you already answered it, but let's say you do a first styling on a juniper. And so I guess it could be, we'll say it's grafted and all the grafts took and they're all perfect.
Yeah.
The highest point that you want to become the apex or the crown eventually. I've seen some people, they bend it backwards. I've seen some people make it go like up and then down. So it kind of like creates
This round top,
a
kinda
round
look.
top right away.
Uh-huh.
Do you do any of that? Or I guess I'm going to guess you're going to say it doesn't really matter what you do because you just want a lot of divisions and a lot of branches.
Well, yeah. Well, my answer to that is, oh, if you're doing an initial wiring on the whole tree, right? I mean, this goes back to more fundamental stuff, is that if you're doing an initial wiring, which means the tree is not really in any kind of developed form. You're just working on the initial lines. Maybe you got the beginnings of a pad and all that stuff. If you're doing that, and so you're in the process of building this thing, there's really no reason to even have a top, right? Just keep that sucker small. You don't need to make it look round, especially if you have a long branch and you do, like you said, right? It gets wired up, curves, and then down, and then the green foliage on it makes it look like there's a dome shape. Structurally speaking, that's not how trees grow anyways. So I definitely don't like doing that unless it's a branch where I actually bent it just down because I know it's going to be a side branch. And what buds out from that continues to build the top like a broom shape. So if we think in our minds, broom shape, what is it? It's a lot of branches just growing up to the side a little bit more to the side, more horizontal, 360, right? That's generally how a true apex is built. Something starts small, it divides, it expands to take up as much sun as it can. It's not this one branch that gets looped around. It may start out that way. Someone might do that, and then things start to grow, and then the tree, it gets cut, and then maybe that kind of line gets cut away in the future. That happens.
Yeah.
But that is kind of a roundabout way of building a top but I know what you mean. It's, people get excited and they want
it to look like a bonsai.
Yeah, like it looks like a bonsai.
After the first styling.
Yeah. But if you know how to grow these trees and you know how, if structurally you want it to be a certain way and that's not how it's going to be, right? It just seems like a waste of time, right, to do that because you're looking at something that will not exist in the future. So what's the point of it?
Yeah.
Why even spend money buying wire to put on that branch when it's going to be removed in the future? What was the point? The only point is a immediate satisfaction right now.
I wonder if that's like a result of too many demos in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. People start thinking that's how you make trees, right? In a 2.5 hour, 3 hour demo, even if it's an all day demo, right? It might be all day because the tree's big. The tree doesn't grow new branches in an 8 hour period, right? You have what you have. And if the branches aren't ideal for it, and they don't exist, then that's at a later time. That's why bonsai takes so long to develop, right? It's not, oh, I have every branch I need right now. That's highly unrealistic. And even if you buy a tree that's finished, maybe you might have, okay, I have everything right. But what if you want to change the style? Then the branches are not what you want anyways. So you'd have to cut things off, move things around. Maybe you just move stuff around, you're okay. If there's no branch in the spot you need a branch, now how's that supposed to work, right? So you have to rebuild it anyways.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part I have when I see trees that are wired in that fashion, is that it's so meaningless to me because this is non-existent. This is not a thing in bonsai. This is not what they look like when they're done. So why even do it? You can't even chalk it up to practice. What are you practicing?
Yeah.
You're practicing how to do it incorrectly, right? Unless that's the structure you're looking for, which I don't understand. Not to say that it's just wrong because it's not what I do. It's just like trees don't grow that way anyway. So what are you making?
Yeah.
If you're making something totally wild and different, that's fine. I'm no problem.
Well, I feel like that is what is expected, at least, and I'm not sure because I don't know what it's like in Japan, for example, but I feel like in the US, people want to see a demo juniper
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
want it to look like a bonsai after
yeah.
one styling. The raw
Exactly.
material,
Um,
make it look like a bonsai, and that involves
because it's
creating an apex.
yeah, and that's and it's exciting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, back in the days when I first started, you got that and a repot, right? Because now it's in a bonsai pot,
Yeah.
right? It's not in a nursery container, so that was a whole new level back then, right? And then people got wise because after a while, it's like all these demo trees are dying
Yeah.
because they got super bent up and then repotted on top of that. I mean, what tree can handle that, right? So at least that part is eased. Nobody's repotting a tree after a demo anymore. Generally, I've seen a few here and there, but it's not good. But the demo, I get it and I don't get it. I get it in a way that, hey, you know what? A club or a group's trying to have an event. They're trying to raise money. Uh, when you see a tree transform, it's
They want
exciting.
pressed.
It's very impressive
Yeah.
looking, right? It's not impressive looking for those who are in the know how to build these things, because they'll be like, "What was all this for?" Right? We're gonna have to cut all these branches off because we can see the problems that are gonna come up, right? That's also one of the downsides in the demo is that there's no accountability from the person doing the demo because once it gets raffled off, they're free and clear of
Yeah,
that tree. They
off
don't
your
have to
hands.
answer to anything that happens afterwards, including its death.
So you might
Yeah.
as well go for as impressive as
You might, yeah, exactly. So you see, it's incentivized you, right? Because if you don't do that and it doesn't look as impressive,
They're
they're
just
like, I don't know if this guy really knows, what he's doing,
for sure.
or this person. And I've seen that a million times, right? Even when Japanese professionals were coming in. People were looking, and you got the one Japanese profession that kind of dolled up the tree a little bit, and one that just did the core work. And they were like, I thought that guy was good,
Yeah.
but I'm not liking this work. And it's not that he's not good. I mean, this guy's won Koku Fu a bunch of times, right? He knows what he's doing. It's just we didn't recognize that, oh, this is a process. It's not a 2-hour demo thing, right? So yeah, and who are you trying to impress? People who don't know what bonsai is supposed to look like? That's who you're impressing. So
Yeah.
why again? I thought we're trying to get people better at this, But again, I understand. It's tough. How do you I know that there's efforts to change that. People are trying to talk about, we know bonsai is not made in a demo. Um, let's see what we can do to try to keep things interesting, but let's not focus on trying to do this transformation. And that's the thing is in Japan, they don't do a lot of demos. And when they do demos, it tends to be about one specific thing. Like, oh, here's this black pine. These are some things I look for. This is the stuff I'm doing right now to continue this development to get this that you see in the show around you, right? Uh, in a way, you've kind of doing it that way, where you kind of promote how rare these things are, right? Or how much effort goes into them, right? If you have this big show and you're like, oh, these trees are all great, and everybody thinks you can just make that in like an 8-hour session or something, they're like worthless,
Yeah.
right? What is this really? Oh, we can just make these, just pop them out one by one. That's not any different. I don't want to insult anybody. That's not any different than the guy selling bonsai in a van down by the street. You know what he's doing, you know? He's going in a nursery, buying a bunch of juniper whips, just chopping them up, laying some stuff out. Here's your bonsai. It looks like something, right? And who buys them? The people who don't know,
Yeah.
right? Because it looks great to them, right? And it has nothing to do with bonsai, right? That's like so far from what it really is supposed to be, or is not even supposed to be, but what bonsai really is.
Yeah.
So So yeah.
Yeah. One thing you said that I've never thought about before, but I really like the description that you used was that an apex is just like a 360-degree pad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never really thought about it like that, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of branches.
And that
lot
takes a lot of
small-
branches.
Small branches.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for those out there that feel like, I just don't have this this understanding of building apexes, it's like, don't worry, it's not really you. It's the tree doesn't have the branches for you to work with anyway. So focus on what do you have to do to get the tree to give you those branches?
Mm.
What do you have to cut to get things to divide? And one division, that's great. You have one branch and you get two, or maybe let's say three, right? Well, that's still only three. How many cuts do you have to make to get enough branches that you can fill the top? But because things compound 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, it can happen pretty fast. So fast, in fact, that most of the time, there's a reason why. Well, there's a couple reasons, but for the main part, there's a reason why most trees, their apex ends up being too big too quickly. And people are scrambling because the bottom branches don't grow so fast. The top grows faster, and the apex is becoming bigger, wider, and now they're trying to fight it. Like it got too big too quick.
Yeah.
And now you're on the opposite end. It's like I couldn't figure out how to develop an apex, and now it's overtaking everything else and killing my lower branches, let's say.
And that's kind of a tough thing to deal with, right?
Yeah,
Like
because
a-
once that happens,
What do you
well, I mean, once you recognize that the apex is the problem, all you can do is make it smaller. If you can't make it smaller, it's going to continue destroying whatever else is around it, generally the stuff below it, right? Because again, the top wants to grow on the top. On a tree, the tree wants to grow on the top, and you allowed it to get so big. That's the other problem, is allowing it to get so big, either because it was developed too early relative to the bottom branches, or it was worked on in a way that caused it to become bigger faster. And that's a whole nother conversation. That's
Yeah.
technical conversation that probably requires a video than explaining because it's drawing out and all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, so I was watching a video, and this may be this is talking technical is challenging just verbally
Yeah,
without
yeah.
drawing things. But Sam Tan said something really interesting. I like the way that he described it. So he described developing trees in two different categories.
Okay, yeah,
So inside out and outside in.
okay.
And essentially what he means by that is with inside out,
Hmm.
you're starting like you do with your deciduous trees, or say on a juniper or say a pine, where you graft very close to the interior of the tree.
Yeah.
And you develop the tree from the inside out.
Hmm.
So you start very small. And I see you do this all the time.
Yeah.
Or with a deciduous tree, let's say you're restarting the tree, you're developing it from the inside, and you're building the silhouette and the branching as the silhouette expands outward. So that would be what he calls inside out.
Okay.
And I don't know if the name for outside in works quite as well. I think the inside out to me works perfectly.
Okay.
What he means by outside in is you take a piece of Yamadori that has recovered from the collection process,
Mhm.
nice and vigorous, and you give it its initial styling.
Yeah.
So you take these branches and you bend them down and you start forming pads
Mhm.
and you make your apex, but you're developing from the outside, bringing everything in.
Yeah.
So that's just the two ways that he describes those processes.
Yeah.
I guess I was curious. I'm really curious your perspective on the pros and cons of doing those both.
Oh, yeah. Thinking about that, and and without talking to Sam, say directly, right? What I'm about to say or what I'm going to say is not any kind of challenge to him. It's just what I'm thinking, right?
Love Sam.
Okay.
Great
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. Great guy.
Solid dude.
So
Shout out to Sam.
Shout out- We
He's
love you, Sam.
best break dancer in bonsai. Did you know that?
I knew that I noticed that he told me that he did like dance stuff,
Yeah,
but I didn't know to what extent. But it sounds like he's pretty serious about it.
I think he's
Like he's
legit.
really good.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to challenge him on a
I
dance
would
off.
Definitely not. I'm not down with that. No dance offs.
Yeah. So the concept of developing, say, bonsai from the inside out, right? Technically, most trees in Japan, that's how they develop. I mean, it's not just the branches, right? It's from I planted a seed and I grew the trunk and I grew the branches. That's bonsai inside out. That's how trees grow.
That's like
Okay. So
100% inside out.
Yeah, inside out, right? So what did I say? Anyways, inside out. You start at the core part and then you work your way out, right? What comes first, what comes second after that, and so forth, right? Every tree starts out that way, right? Why fight it? So the outside in concept, I don't really see it as an outside in the sense that if you have a big collected, say, Yamadori, and you have random branches, it's still inside out for me with those trees. The main thing is that I'm not working with a tree that has, even on the deciduous tree, say I'm cutting, if I get a brand new trident maple, let's just say, right, and all the branches are leggy and they're not usable, I cut them off and I regrow new branches, right? But not all trees require me to cut everything off. What if the main branch is perfectly fine, right? So of course I'm going to keep that. So in the case of a collected tree, it's got all these branches that I probably don't want, but there's some core branches that I do want, right? And what are those branches? Maybe key main branches, branches that can be maneuvered around because I want to build a structure a certain way. So there are elements of it that I can use. So for me, that's still inside out because I'm still bending those branches. It's not like I have to graft them all. If I can bend it and use it because it's an interesting branch, I'm going to do it. And maybe I graft after that, right? So I'm working still inside out in the sense that I'm bending those branches because I can use those branches, but I don't spend a lot of time wiring those branches at the end, other than maybe for health reasons, because I know I'm cutting them off. And so the confusing part for me is I still don't understand the purpose of that, right? If you have a collected tree, and you decide to do this initial styling and you're wiring every branch, maybe not every, but you're trying to make it look nice for the sake of cutting it off later, is that what's going to happen? Right? Because, okay, you use this branch, but then something new pops out because you wired the tree, and then you cut off what you wired and then use the new branch. Isn't that really inside out anyway? So why waste time doing that when all you needed to do was cut the branch, maybe wire the main branch, get the core stuff that you really want down where you want. All the frilly stuff at the end is nonsense stuff. Cut those back, get the tree to bud where you want or grow where you want, work with those branches, and it becomes a inside out thing again. If it's a tree that has branches, a collected tree that totally has branches that I don't want, say the tree is 6 feet tall, and I really like the first 3 feet of the trunk. Okay, I got nothing to work with, right? Other than the trunk. There's no branches for me to bend, nothing. Does that mean I just can't turn this 6-foot tree into bonsai now? Because that's outside in bonsai, right? So it limits you to what you can do with material now. Because what if it has nothing for you? You just make it work anyways, and you just make a 6-foot tall tree, style it out. No, you graft it, you make it a 3-foot tree that you like, and you grow the branches out, which becomes an inside out thing again. So it just seems like that's a lot of effort that's wasted. What is the purpose of that? Unless what you styled you actually want to keep, then there's purpose to that. But if it's wiring for the sake of it looking nice, but you know you're going to replace it, there is no purpose for that, other than maybe you can't replace it now because the replacement doesn't exist yet. But making it showy and wiring it, that's like more than you really need to do to get it to back bud. I understand wiring certain branches down because that stresses it and it'll cause it to back bud. But do you really have to try to make this semi-looking pad that you're going to chop off? Because for I don't understand that, right? I don't understand the logic behind that or the value in it. Like, it's not going to be part of the tree in the future. I don't have a lot of time to work on trees, right? I want to maximize. Why would I waste time? Why would I waste money on copper wire, right? To do that, to cut it off. I don't understand. I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to sound like an asshole about it, but I don't understand that. Why would you do that? It
Yeah.
just doesn't seem meaningful to me, right? I mean, believe me, I'm trying to think of the positives of doing that. What are some of the benefits? Now, here's maybe a benefit that I've seen in Japan, right? And I think we've talked about this before, is that you get and this is a little bit more suited around either making yourself more famous or making your clients happy. You get this raw material, you make it look kind of nice, fully knowing it's going to change over time. But your client's happy, you look good because it's like, wow, you're the magician. And you know how I feel about magicians. Well, we know what magicians are. They're illusionists, right? It's not real magic. It's an illusion. I hope nobody calls me a magician, right? Because I'm not trying to lie, right? Or fake people out. Okay. So what happens is these trees get wired out and they look good, or they look semi good, or at least there's a shape. It looks clean. Fully knowing that, when that branch backbuds, I'm gonna cut it, I'm gonna lay it out, and it'll look clean again. The client kind of doesn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't know. You're the professional, right? And over time, you can slowly morph the tree into something. But again, this is the roundabout way of it, right? But you look good, your client's happy, you're employed for a little bit longer because I could have just chopped everything off, right? And hope the client trusts me, right? Uh, and so it became kind of a win-win for everybody. So I can see how that's why that process happened. And I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a negative, right? Sometimes we need to do that. Some clients just kind of want to see something nice. I understand that. I super understand that.
Oh.
Who doesn't want to have nice stuff, right? you know, um, but at some point there is maturity that happens, right? As we get better at bonsai. After, so many decades of doing it and you see the final result. Well, doing it that way that I just talked about, yeah, I guess you can just run with that forever, right? But generally with the clients that I work with, after a while when they see trees that are more refined and finished, or they have trees that are refined and finished, they look at that and they're like, yeah, that's really good. I see the steps that I need to take. Yeah, why are we messing around with this?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the end product, right?
Mhm.
Um, hey, that's great if a client can pay you a bunch of money to wire stuff all the time. It's like, that's not satisfactory for me at all,
Yeah.
right? Because I am not doing it for the money, right?
Yeah.
So uh, I need more meaning behind that. And now it's not like I just chop a bunch of trees and I'm just like, yeah, it is what it is. I don't do that. But I do explain to my clients, I'm cutting this because of this. And then after a while, when they see the process and things become better, they'll be like, oh, I totally see. And then so the next tree that they decide to start as a project and I cut a bunch of stuff off and it looks like nothing, they'll be like, I know exactly why you had to do that.
Mm.
Because it yields this nice tree at the end, right? You just had to get the branches where you want. You didn't try to force it. Because sometimes that backfires on people too. You force the structure, you get this raw material, you suck it in somehow, right? And then, clients, they're not dumb, right? For the most part. Right? Okay. At some point, they're going to see that you cut that branch off, right? And they're going to be like, did we not need that branch then? I remember when we started with it and you just cut it off. And this is kind of where the BS maybe might come out of the professionals, oh yeah, we didn't really need it after all, or yeah, this is part of the process, whatnot, whatever they have to say, right? It's like at the end of the day, yeah, we didn't need it, right? And clients do notice it. I find they will notice it, and it's just a matter of if they decide to act on it, right? So is this just wasting my time? Well, we just cut off everything we wired last year, right? Or 3 years ago, whatever, right? And so again, it's just a matter of maybe they still trust the process and they say, oh, maybe that's just part of it. Most of the time they're not, on you about it. They're just they trust that you're doing the right thing and helping them out. And so, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to understand. I don't understand. And the weird thing about it is that, I mean, I apprenticed in Japan, right? And I'm not saying that it's all knowing Japan, but like nobody does it that way in Japan. Nobody does instant bonsai in Japan, and they make really great trees. For those that went to Koku Fu, those are examples of really great trees. They were not made within a couple of years. Nowhere near that. Nowhere 5-year plan. That's total BS. It's decades, right? And it sounds maybe discouraging because it takes so long, but uh, maybe later, as we talk more and we start talking about Japanese aesthetics uh, and how that's intertwined with their culture, it's like you start to understand that long haul view of bonsai. And that's probably why I feel the Japanese do bonsai so well. It's because it's built into their culture, right? That their culture allows them, where their mindset related to their religion and all sorts of stuff, why they made bonsai the way it is. It's not like they came up with putting a tree in a pot. Everybody's put a tree in a pot. I mean, cavemen did that probably, right? Or some caveman saw a tree in the ground and they decided, well, if I pull it out and I stuck it here, someone had to have done that at one point, and it started growing, right? And I can move this tree around. The Japanese people didn't discover that, right? Everybody discovered that at some point. But why were they the ones that ended up coming up with what we know as bonsai, right? It's something about their culture that allowed them to maximize what that is, or it became something that we enjoy. It's because their culture allowed for that to happen, right? It moved it in that direction, whereas other people may have done something and it's just not that interesting, or it didn't fascinate us enough for it to become a thing. So yeah, that's where. So it's not that. So it's not some mystery. It's not something that I came up with. I mean, the bonsai that I do is not something I invented. I learned it in Japan. I might have modified it a little bit or added to it a little bit, as we all do. But generally, it's when you're creating bonsai. I mean, it is what it is, right? You're in the business of building this artistic piece. It's not. I dug a tree out of the ground. It gave me everything I needed. There's no such thing as that. It'd be nice. That'd save me a lot of time. But no, you got to watch the tree grow for a while. And then you get to do something. And then you get to spend more time watching it grow.
Yeah.
And then you get to do something. And then you start thinking about it. It's like most of the time in bonsai, you're just watching the thing grow. Right? You're watching them grow 6-foot branches for you to keep 3 inches of it and you chop it off. You're like, wow, that was a lot of biogold to feed that 6-foot branch. That's a very expensive 6-foot branch. I just chopped off, right? Why are we doing this? It's like, yeah, because we need a thick 3-inch branch, right? And that's how plants work.
Yeah.
Right? They don't become 3 inches thick because they're 3 inches long.
Yeah.
Right?
So to recap a couple points. So it sounds like you really value growing trees, starting them from the inside and growing them outward, and that's how long term.
Yeah, and if
good, like highest.
Yeah, absolutely. And and then of course the quality involves how you manipulate those branches and build those branches, right? And including how good is the core of the tree, which is the trunk. Um, but I was gonna say something, and I just lost my train of thought. um, yeah, if I was handed a piece of raw material, again, I never just think, well, okay, I only have a trunk, I gotta replace everything. It's not like that. It's what is it on this tree? What am I trying to create? And what is it that this material has? What part of it can I use? Sometimes all it is the trunk. Sometimes all it is the first third of the trunk, right? We've all done that. Cut tops off of the tree, right? And grow new tops, right? That's not a new thing. So if it has some key branches, main branches, secondary branches, if those they happen to be an ideal, so I'll definitely use them.
Yeah.
I'm ahead of the game. I don't
Yeah.
have to regrow them, right? But most of the time with raw material, especially collected material, that's just not the case. Branches are generally too leggy. Trust me, I'll use whatever I can that's close. If I can use it, I'll use it. But the stuff that's not usable, okay, just tag that it's not usable. What do I need to do with it right now? Can I cut it off now? If I can't, can I cut part of it off now so I can cut more of it later? Do I just need the tree to live? Don't cut anything, right? And then once we know it's lived, then you start pushing it back. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying that the outside in technique doesn't really, it's not as, it doesn't really describe it as well as inside out, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why.
Like inside out is a really perfect term.
Yeah,
Outside in, I'm doing a horrible job. Like I need to ask Sam.
yeah.
And I'm so sorry, Sam. Drinking too much whiskey over here. Can't remember exactly what you said. And you know, maybe it is a really good term because like you said, we start from the outside,
Yeah,
but ultimately we're getting back to the inside and then going
yeah,
back to the
yeah.
outside.
Yeah, exactly. That's essentially what it is, right? So
So
why not just start from the inside out? It just seems shorter. And then let's just be real with ourselves, right? Just be honest. And I've been harping about being honest a lot lately. Um, Hobbyists, enthusiasts, professionals. Let's just be honest with ourselves about what we're doing, right? If it's if I'm styling a tree, and I've been there, right? I started uh when I started teaching it or getting out there doing demos, I knew that when I did a demo, I had to make the tree look nice, or people were gonna be like, "Who's this?" There,
yeah,
right?
totally.
And so, what did I do? I had to take shortcuts and make it look nice. I didn't, uh, I didn't do the necessary cuts. It wasn't until after my training that so I was like, why this whole, I mean, God, Jesus, you look
So
at the trees in Japan and it takes so long to develop. Why would you spend extra time to develop it? It makes no sense to me, right? So I'll finish this, but the being honest with yourself is why do you do it this way? Uh, and it's okay. I'm not judging anybody. If it's because you have to satisfy an audience, hey, I understand. I've been there, right? The key now is where do you go from there? If you understand that, do you want to just keep doing that? You want to do something different? Uh, that's why I don't do demos, right? Or that kind of demo, because I feel like I'm just kind of tricking people, right? When I do that, that's the truth. I'm not saying people who do demos, they're just tricking. I'm not trying to make it sound bad. But for me, I feel bad about it because this is not really how it's made, right? So what is it? Am I am I doing it because I like being praised for doing quote unquote great work? I mean, I totally understand the allure of that. Who
for sure.
doesn't like being patted on the
Yeah.
back and saying you're great?
Everybody likes
Everybody likes that. People, you can take compliments for the rest of your life and you'll be happy, right? So I understand, but again, you gotta be honest with yourself. If that's why you're doing it, you might want to reflect on that and think about, okay, what is it that you're really trying to do? Is this what your bonsai is all about, or is it really about creating something special? which is what I'm kind of on the side of. I mean, it doesn't mean I'll create something special, right? Like, get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm awesome at this or anything, but it seems more productive, right? Uh, to just kind of go about it step by step in building this tree, because it is a little different than other art forms, right? It takes time. You have to let the tree contribute to it. It has to grow. You have to wait for the tree. It's not a painting. You can just buy paint all day and put it on a canvas and then you have it. You don't have to wait for anything. It's on your pace. With bonsai, you have to wait for the tree to grow. You can't force it. You force it, you know the results of forcing it, right? Tree dies, things don't work out. Or you force it and it doesn't look that good because it's forced, right? It's again, not to say that if it's some different style, some say not tree-like shape structure, then maybe you don't have to wait as long. But inevitably, the tree is going to grow. You have to wait for something to come, right? It's never finished really
For sure.
in after one styling. So the tree has to contribute. You're waiting for it,
Yeah.
even in that instant mode. It still has to grow a little bit because it just might look too sparse after an initial styling. That's a small contribution. The tree grows back a little bit.
Definitely.
Sure.
That's great. I love hearing the way your mind works and your process in developing trees. And I
Right.
think you make a lot of really good points. And I think, there's definitely some funky things going on in the US, like demo culture. I think,
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of unfortunate because I'll say it in a way, like I grew up in that, right? As many of us have. I started bonsai. I went to club demos, shows, and then you see a demo and you're like, okay, I see what they're doing. I think this is how you're supposed to do it based on what I saw. And and I was really kind of starting to see before I left to go to Japan to do an apprenticeship, I started seeing kind of a pushback against it a little bit. No, we don't want just the standard demo, or hey, how about we stop repotting trees after the demo? At least there was that, right? And then I came back. There's more talk about, yeah, look, we're building trees and blah, 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 all that stuff, good stuff that's happening. Things are changing. But then it kind of fell back in. Um, I mean, there's always going to be clients, people looking for that instant bonsai, uh, or people who don't want to change, don't believe there's a change to be made. And they're paying people, right? They're people who pay. So of course they're gonna find people who accommodate that, right? And so this whole instant bonsai thing uh, part kind of came back in a way, right? Came back, and not to say that the people who are doing it is doing it out of like malice or anything like that. Uh, but it's hard for me to see really the value in it. And I can see how some people might argue and say, well, they're not actually doing instant bonsai. This is just their process. And man, that's a process I don't understand. How about that? Right? It makes no sense to me. I'll tell you what, if it's a process that I feel gives me high quality material at the end, I do it for sure. I did it when I was trying to learn how to do bonsai. And it took me so far, but when it really came down to it, when you want to get to that really higher level of bonsai, it does not work. It falls apart. And this goes back to the honesty thing, is that after a while, you have to be honest with yourself. Say, if you're doing something and it's just not working or yielding the result, you gotta just say, hey, look, I need to do something different. This is not working. It's not, I can understand if you're doing it for a couple of years, you're like, maybe I just need more time. That's understandable. If you're doing it for 10, 20 years and it's still not working, not to compare yourself with anybody, but if you're developing a tree and say you want it, let's just say hypothetically, you want it to look like a Koku Fu tree, right? Or a tree that's in that category that's like considered, wow, that's a winning tree. That's a great tree. Everybody would love to have that tree. I've not seen a single example of working this raw material and somehow it becomes this great tree, this let's just say this outside in process, right? It always looks like this partially or always in development kind of look because it's always getting replaced, uh, or it just never really pans out. It's always just kind of and part of it, it's not like you're doing bad work in the sense that your technique is bad and all that stuff. It's not that at all, or that you're a bad person or anything like that. It's just the mindset that comes with doing it that way. For me, doesn't seem to match the essence of what bonsai really is. Okay, which is something that takes an incredibly long period of time to develop, and even that doesn't work out all the time. Um, and the mindset of understanding that you're you're building this thing, right? You're involved with it. The tree's involved with it. It's and the concept that this time frame of using is in the core of it too. It's not just, oh, you're technically skilled. You take this material and you make it a masterpiece. That that time frame or the concept of understanding it takes this long time automatically builds in this aesthetic in the tree that's unmatched to anything that's done quickly. And it's I mean it's hard for me to explain it, but that is an important element in the end result of this tree. So you can see that it's not just, well, your wiring's good or it's bad. Yeah, that's one part of it. The more abstract or more harder to understand is these more philosophical thoughts kind of behind your whole process in general, right? If there's any sense of rushing something, it's like it doesn't work at the long run, right? Or trying to get an edge on something. Part of it, and then you start after a while, you look at it and you're just like, when someone was telling me long time ago that you have to love the process, you're like, you have to love the process, right? And you're like, the goal is not this end result. I mean, it's not always that. The goal is going on this journey with this tree to that end result, right? And it's great in all those levels, all those areas. Yeah, it's great when the tree is finished, you're showing it. Wow, look at all your hard work. I love that. Who doesn't love that? Right? But you have to be able to look at the tree that's half developed, be like, I'm doing good work. This thing is working out. Things are going well. The tree is responding well. It's responding to the work I'm doing. The tree is responding well. Uh, I'm not letting those spider mites get me down, getting the tree down.
Fuck spider mites.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate spider
Yeah, exactly. They're just, or any other bug. And so when you see this whole process and you're just at the end, especially at the end, the gravy's at the end too, and you're just like, wow, the tree's at this end result, and you know how hard it was the whole way, right? Because of, effing spider mites, right? Or whatnot that can get in your way and totally destroy a tree, right? Um, you're just surprised that anything actually makes it to the end, right? So it just makes it even better at the end that it made it, right? How many trees, for each of us, how many trees did we lose to gain like a really good tree? And most of us, we probably lost count how many trees we killed or didn't work out. So we decide to sell it or something, whatever the case is. From beginning to end, that's not common, right? Now it's easy to think it's common. You go to Koku Fu, there's 360 trees in 8 days, right? You're like, well, apparently it seems very common here, right? That's out of thousands and thousands, maybe 100,000 trees that didn't work out, right? Or worked out, but not as good as these trees. There's a lot of trees out there. So sometimes we have kind of this illusion that everything will work out. So for those of us that deal with trees that don't work out, it's common, right? It's not your fault all the time. It's hard to make a tree great or look really good. Things happen all the time. You do everything perfect, and your grandkids drop a basketball in the tree. Well, that's it. Or years ago when there was an earthquake in Napa, you have a tree and there was an earthquake, fell off the bench, half the branches broke.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you decide to rebuild it, and it's going to take a long time, or you just got rid of the tree. Right? It's just something is that one 30-second event, and now a whole group of trees didn't make it. So it seems you do appreciate the end result more, right? Because you appreciate the journey. It's it's a challenging journey. I wouldn't cheapen it by this kind of instant thing, right?
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. Well, I really appreciate it. That was really cool to pick your brain about that.
I hope I
subject.
explained it well. I don't mean to explain it in a way that poo-pooed anybody. I'm not trying to do that. This is just how I feel about it, and yeah, I mean, yeah.
So-
So,
Well, I would love to ask you about Japanese aesthetics. However,
okay, yeah,
can we take a quick restroom break?
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I'm just gonna leave this on for a sec,
Okay,
and
yeah, don't take it in the bathroom. Okay.
grab some water, and we'll be back. We're back.
Okay.
So one thing that I've heard you say a few times now, and I just saw that you have some books back there,
Mm.
but you told me that you are interested in studying Japanese aesthetics. I guess I was curious first off, what do you mean by that exactly? Like, what do you mean by Japanese aesthetics?
Um.
Maybe as it relates to bonsai.
Yeah. I mean, that's mainly why I'm looking into it, right? It's not that I think I'm looking into it more now these days. Mainly not so much that I'm trying to incorporate something. I mean, when I went to Japan and I did what I did there, that was based around Japanese aesthetics, right? What they like to do in bonsai, let's say. So they applied their aesthetics to it, right? And everybody has a little different aesthetics, but there's a general aesthetic that they like. And how I learned it was through just kind of watching, copying, right? Getting a sense of it. Uh, but never really any kind of solid like explanation. Me being from the U.S., Western mindset, we're trying to get some like logical. Okay, this info and this is how it's applied, and so we try to break it down, right, to understand it, right, which is not a bad thing, right? Try to understand, and so
Well, really quick,
yeah,
backing up. So when you say Japanese aesthetics,
yeah.
essentially you are talking about what the Japanese find beautiful.
Yeah, or their sense of what beauty is to them, right? Whereas in Western aesthetics, what we consider as beautiful to us is different,
Yeah.
right? And so, uh, growing up in Western society, right, you just get used to it. Nobody really tells you unless you go to school and study it, right? I went to Japan and studied it, but it's not like anybody tells you. It's you had to kind of get a sense for it, right? Which later I did then find out that that's kind of how you learn it too, right? That's part of it. Whereas in Western aesthetics, it's a little bit more of uh, I'm not an expert in explaining it or anything, but it seems to be more of a step by step thing, right? You do this, and this is what you get, and that's why that's great, that kind of thing. I know it's a bit more complicated than that, right? But in Japanese aesthetics, specifically, it seems like there's a lot of that going behind, but with very little explanation. It's a sense of, but so as I'm doing more and more bonsai and thinking about these things and getting a feel for why is it that I'm doing it this way, I was trying to get a better understanding of uh, two reasons why I'm doing this is for my own better understanding of it and how I could potentially convey this concept to people here. Because not a lot of people in the US understand it, nor would they. Why would they? They don't live in Japan, they live in the US, right? We're surrounded by Western aesthetics. And so we think in a certain way, right? That then gives us a certain aesthetic. Whereas in Japan, they think differently, right? And it's based on their culture, the history, their religion, right? So they think a certain way. Heavily religious, right? Not that they're heavily religious people, but their culture is heavily influenced by religion, Buddhism specifically, and Shintoism, but a lot of Zen Buddhism. Uh, I find out now, having read about it. And so I talked to some people who were studying Japanese aesthetics, Suiseki people, things like that. And I was recommended some books, so I started reading them, written by Japanese people, trying to explain it a little bit. But it's very interesting because there's also in that pile of books, there's thick books also that are PhDs that try to explain it, right? And I find that the little thin books explain it the best. And it's explained, and it's still hard for me to understand or fully grasp because I did not grow up in Japan or in the Eastern style, right? I grew up here, Western. I'm a Westerner, right?
Yeah.
So, and you find out that their aesthetics, it's not just like, oh, well, I know Western aesthetics or I understand it or I live with it, right? And okay, it's just a matter of, well, I just got to learn Eastern aesthetic. It turns out it's not that. It turns out that the way to learn it, you almost have to live it, right? And that's why those thick books by, PhDs, it's a lot of extra words to try to explain something that's very hard to explain because it's very emotional.
Yeah.
It's based on a lot of feelings, and you imagine trying to explain feelings. Like, how do you do that? You have to live it. You have to experience it, right? You can't read it in the book and just like, oh, okay, I got it. Right? It just doesn't work that way. So those little small books written by some, Japanese people about Japanese aesthetics, it's a lot of, and I'm not an expert for sure. I'm going to chop this all up, but it's this sense of things that they tend to talk about. That's again rooted in religion and things that they've experienced in the past, right? Which was very interesting to me because in Japan, their borders were closed for so long. It actually benefited them in this sense that it allowed them to come up with this mindset and live with that mindset for so long and build on it and experience it
And not be influenced.
and not be influenced by anybody else. So they got to really live in it for a long time. Whereas other cultures, you might be more open, and then other ideas come in, you jump onto that, and because you like it or it makes more sense, whatever they get, and it gets kind of muddy. You're not in any one thing for long periods of time, and that has happened in Japan too, right? Because once the borders were open, Western information came in, people started liking that, so people moved into that thinking, and there's advantages to it. It's not like I'm not saying one is better than the other, right? The main thing is just I just wanted to understand. I'm doing bonsai. There's something about Japanese aesthetics that I like, which is why I do bonsai, right? And so, and I don't live in Japan. So what can I do to try to, catch some of it? I mean, I lived in Japan for a short period of time. Um, I grew up in an Asian household, which has some very small bits and pieces there that are related to their mindset of things, uh, but just little bits and pieces, uh, which I'm grateful for because then I can at least say, well, I've experienced that kind of thinking, right? So it was a combination of me just trying to get a better understanding of what is it that I like about it, also to then help me kind of somehow relay it to the people I work with. and help them better understand why is it that they are attracted to uh, this art form, and how can it then help them when they're deciding, I have this tree, what do I want to do to it to make it really beautiful to them, the beauty that they like, right? It might give some insight to that. That's not just this technical one, step two, step three. Because I mean, when I do bonsai, I can get very technical about it. Okay, let's thicken these branches. Let's hold this off because it's growing too strong. Blah blah blah, all that stuff. Yeah, that's all technical stuff in horticulture. But then when you're styling the tree, it can't. It that kind of falls short. You can technically make it look beautiful, right? And you can appreciate it for it, the technicality of it, right? But inevitably, it's never quite the beauty that you were expecting, right? So what is it? What's that missing piece? And part of it also was when I was looking at like a bunch of Koku Fu books. I'm looking at trees that won or trees that got into the show and trees that maybe at first glance I look at it, I'm like, I don't think this tree looks that great, but yet it's still in the show, right? Now we can always take the side of well, sometimes bad trees get in the show. Or, guy probably had money, whatever the case is, where we come up with all these ideas of why the tree's in. Instead of taking that approach, I was looking at it and I asked myself, I said, okay, what is it that I'm not seeing that apparently other people have saw that this tree was fit to be in this book, right? Because maybe I'm missing out on something, right? Yeah, maybe it could be that the guy just had money and he bribed somebody. Who knows? Whatever the case, it happens. I'm sure it happens.
Yeah.
Right. But I do believe that a lot of the trees in there are for good reason, which is that they are good trees, right? Or well-made trees. And so I just wanted to make sure, okay, am I missing something? Am
Yeah.
I which again, why would I not want to know, right? If I'm missing something, what is there? And again, it's not something that's just instant or immediate to understand. You have to look at it for a while and just kind of stew in it, it seems, right? And then you hopefully you get kind of this moment of enlightenment. You're like, I think I get it, right? Or you get a little hint of it, why this tree is special that you just didn't see it because my mindset was not set that way, right? Again, I'm looking at a book that a bunch of people who like Japanese aesthetics have based it on, and I'm out here on the outside, Western aesthetics, and I'm trying to apply my thought into this picture, and it doesn't make sense to me. Well, of course it doesn't make sense, right? We're totally different mindsets, right? So I'm trying to get a peek, right? That's why I went to Japan. That's why I recommend people should go to Japan, or why people should apprentice in Japan, is that then they get to peek in there and live it a little bit or see it a little bit. It might give them a better understanding of what they're looking at instead of just looking at it from, say, a Western mindset and saying, well, I like it because of my Western standards, or I don't like it because of my Western standards. It's like, well, that's meaningless. It was not meant for your mindset. It was built for this other mindset. Well, I mean, I'm out here in the Western side, but there was something about that Eastern aesthetic or the Japanese aesthetic, not Eastern, but Japanese aesthetic that I like, that attracted to me. And why would I not want to understand it? And it turns out that, yeah, I mean, reading some of these books really helped. It helped explain some things. It made things even more confusing, right? Because it got kind of into this more philosophical and then this history of their culture, Japanese culture, and how that mindset kind of came to be. And so I feel if people can get a little taste of it, it'll help them understand, or understand at least the bonsai that I try to create, because that's what it's based on. It's this Japanese aesthetic, right? And I like it. What probably maybe the main reason is I like it, right? That that's what I want to do, and I'm not trying to do. It's not that I'm not open to other aesthetics, of course, right? But I am really trying to focus on, I want to do this well. I want to pick up the essence of this aesthetic because I find it very beautiful, and I'm trying to understand it more and more. And it requires a lot of like the books that you saw. There's some of them I haven't read yet, but there's a number. They're not even that big, right? And I find that I read it or I read a section of it. I have to put it down, think about it, and I'm just like lost in the beginning. And then I have to pick it up again, read it again, think about it. Then I do my day-to-day thing in bonsai. I come back, read it again, think about it. And then one day a little bit of it clicks. Oh, I think I understand what he was trying to say in that one paragraph because I'm seeing it right here. And then I have to read it again. So it's taken me a long time to read this little thin book
Yeah.
because you have to kind of contemplate, because it's essentially telling you that you have to think totally different. I'm 46 years old. I've thought pretty much how I've thought for 46 years in the US, right? To suddenly somehow think like the Japanese, for example. Of course, it's not going to happen. It's going to take a while for us to accept that in our brains because we're so locked into what we know, what we know is correct. And it turns out there's another way of thinking about things. And it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just another way of thinking about things. So I have to move into that mindset when I'm dealing with bonsai, let's say. I mean, and I still approach bonsai in a very Western manner, especially when I teach it, right? I don't tell my clients, well, you got to feel like what you got to do and, blah, blah, blah. So I tend to be like, because I'm teaching Americans, right? They're used to, well, we just got to grow this branch out. It's got to get thicker. How do we get it thicker? Well, we let it grow. Right? We can digest that. We understand that. It's logical to us, which it turns out that because I was reading a little bit about Western aesthetics too. And this concept of thinking logically or rationally is not something we just develop, like something we always innately had. It's something that was developed and became widespread. Thinking logically, right, or with reason. The concept of thinking with reason is something we had to invent, right? It's just so mainstream now that we think it's normal, right? But there was a time where people didn't think that way also. And it's so hard for us to, how is that possible, right? Because we lived in it. We lived in this thinking rational period, right? But it wasn't always this way. And so that was especially fascinating to me. And it just made me think, well, in the world, a lot of people think of things very differently. And if I'm going to get stuck in one way of thinking, I mean, how is that going to work? I've limited myself. So I already do bonsai. So this is one way of, okay, what is it that they're doing? What is it that they're thinking? And what is it that they're thinking that's allowing them to create this thing that I really like? It might be good to know some of that.
Yeah. I was wondering, when you're looking at a Koku Fu book, and is there maybe any examples of, hey, I didn't understand this tree, and then I started studying Japanese aesthetics, and now I either understand this concept and it made me appreciate this tree, or I at least better understand why maybe people in Japan would appreciate this tree.
Um, yeah, that's a little tricky. Yes, that has happened. And then some stuff has happened just from a Western mindset of, okay, well, I just didn't know this. And now because I know this, well, this tree is technically good, whereas I didn't think it was technically good, right? That's the Western thing about it. Yeah, it turns out that there are trees in the book that I've looked at, and as I've matured and done more in bonsai, I looked back and I was like, I never really looked at this tree that way, but I appreciate this tree more now. Now, it's hard for me to still get away from the kind of Western thinking because I might look at it and say, wow, that's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
That took time, right? So I still inevitably appreciate those things still, especially in the sense of, well, it took somebody a lot of time. It wasn't just it took time, right? Somebody had to do it, right? Or a group of people did it, and I appreciate that. Right? Oh, it turns out some main things about Japanese aesthetics that I like when I look at certain bonsai is a subtleness to things. You can tell things were done a certain way, but it's not super in your face. It's generally it always has some kind of a more of a calming effect, right? Calming, quiet effect. Even in the way how they do displays, that tends to be kind of a big key element of it. It's you know, things are spaced apart in a way where it's more calming, not busy,
Yeah.
and stressful, that kind of stuff. Which I know that there are some displays or some bonsai styles that are purposely done that way. And I would say that's definitely a different type of aesthetics, uh, which is okay. That's fine, right? Again, I'm not saying any of those are bad. Uh, so you start noticing some of the nuances away. You start breaking down, and you break it down to the point. And even me saying breaking it down becomes more technical again, right? So it's just difficult. You just have to look at it and just kind of just appreciate it, and that's where the concept of negative space is hard to understand, right? And why it's so prevalent in Japanese aesthetics. Like negative space is something, right, to them. And how do you use it? When is it appropriate in the sense of what they consider beautiful? It's all stuff that's at least difficult for me to explain, and it turns out that it's more of a feeling thing, and then man, that's hard to explain. And this funny thing is that in the book, in one of the books I'm reading, one of the author will even go as far as saying, and this is a very unwestern thing, is that some people never understand it. It's almost it's something that you just have or you don't, this understanding of this aesthetic that they're looking for. Some people just have a better sense of it than others. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's just, in a way, at first when I read that, I was just like, man, you have no say in it, right? Sorry, you lucked out.
Yeah.
Or you didn't luck out. Bad luck. You just don't got it.
Mhm.
It's hard for us as Westerners to accept that, right? Because we're kind of like, well, no, we just got to try harder, work harder, or learn more. We're just not getting the right information, right? And sometimes that is the case, right? It's not like that's not true, um, or in my Western mind, right? And I conveyed this to one of my clients one time, or one of my students, and he immediately says, "No, I don't believe in that. I believe anybody can be taught anything." Right? And I said, "Well, that's your Western mind thinking that way again, right? Because you're based on how you process information, right?" And so, and at first I was somewhat offended by that concept too, right? Because someone was like, What are you talking about? That means I can't participate just because I just don't have it? That seems so unfair."
Yeah.
But it turns out that the more I thought about it, and as I reread things, it wasn't even a sense of you got it or you don't. It's really just that's the way things are, kind of a thing, right? So it's an acceptance, really,
Yeah.
of that is life. I don't know. So I've been more accepting of it. Not to say that I just go telling people that, oh, you just don't have it, right? I mean, we got to really examine that. But it does become a little bit of a maybe an acceptance of just this is life, and sometimes these things happen. You don't have to get bent out of shape about it. Again, being honest with yourself, it is what it is. So how do we work with it, right? Um, what can we do about it? It doesn't mean we just lost either, right? Maybe you just got maybe not as good a sense about it. And so yeah, it tends to be a little bit more of this hard to explain emotional response that is key to their aesthetics, and it also seems to be heavily influenced by Zen Buddhism, which I don't know very much about. Which of course then leads me to like maybe I should find some information about that and understand that. And it's just from the books I've read and little hints of what Zen Buddhism is. It's concepts that are extremely, I believe, extremely difficult for Western minds to accept because they're concepts that are so different than what we think of as in what the world is or what things are.
Yeah.
That it's just like what am I reading here?
Yeah.
What? This makes absolutely no sense because that's not how life works, right? Again, that's how we're thinking.
When you're saying this, it's interesting because a lot of me is saying, well, should we even try and understand Japanese aesthetics if we are Western? Why
Yeah.
not just accept that we're Western and
Oh yeah,
think,
yeah. You know, and the interesting thing about it, because I knew going in, I remember I told people this too. I said I'm gonna try to study this. I'm probably gonna hear some stuff that I really want to hear, and I'm probably gonna figure some stuff out that I really don't want to hear. Right? Because this is new. Of course, why would I assume I just know it? Or oh, yeah, of course the answer is here. The good stuff is here, right? I just don't know it. So interesting enough, my perception of that is, and that's a very good point. I'm glad you made it. Is that if say we're related to bonsai, if say we're doing bonsai, and if I like Japanese aesthetics in bonsai, and if you like Japanese aesthetic as well, it's good to understand it, uh, so we understand it. So we maybe apply it to bonsai, right? And I would say for those that don't like Japanese or don't know much about it, I wouldn't say, well, just don't do it. I would say, well, you might learn something, or at least understanding is good. You don't have to apply it, but if you know some stuff about it, why not, right? You might learn something, right? Use the parts that you like, right? It's not like you have to like the whole thing, right? There might be an element of it that you like and you incorporate it into something new. But it did make me realize that if you wanted to approach bonsai with a Western aesthetic, can you do that?
yeah,
Absolutely, you can. But again, just be real about it, right? Or be honest with yourself. I'm approaching bonsai and I'm going with a very Western aesthetics for it. And so when I look at a tree, for example, I'm judging a tree, right? I'm looking at it and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is the artist trying to do? I can't just say, well, they didn't follow Japanese aesthetics, so it's trash, right? I look at it and say, obviously, they're not trying to do Japanese aesthetic. They're doing something different. What is that, right? And uh, and how does that all work together? So it did make me understand that, well, hey, you know what? If bonsai was created because of a group of people and based on their culture, if you get a whole nother group of people and they have a whole different culture, right? And they decide to do bonsai, right? Now, maybe you can argue and say, well, maybe they're not doing bonsai because bonsai is a little bit too directly linked to Japanese aesthetics. Let's say, for argument's sake, we say that. So if a different culture is doing it, are they doing bonsai? Maybe they're doing something different, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. I always think of it as like, well, if you're playing baseball and you decide to change a bunch of rules, you don't still get to call it baseball, right? You call it a different name, right? It doesn't mean it's wrong. You're just not doing what the original intent was, right? You're doing something different. You're working with plant material, but the aesthetics is different. And again, that's not wrong. But you decide that, hey, this is what we like. This is what we do. Now, I do argue that a lot of us got into bonsai because there's something about Japanese aesthetics that we like. So why not explore that? We might like it even more or learn something. Or if you say, I like that, I understand it, or at least I'm trying to understand it, not my thing. I want to do something different, then absolutely go for it. But don't muddy the waters and think that you're doing somehow some Japanese, bonsai, right? It's okay. You don't, nor most of the time they're not saying that they're doing that anyway, right? But I wouldn't try to say, well, I'm doing some new form of bonsai or I'm doing something that then challenges traditional bonsai. It's not even a challenge. You're just doing something different. And if you like that, if people like that, then go for it. I'm not against that at all, right? But just know that that's what you're doing. Uh, and comparing the two is, I don't think it's really, uh, I don't think it's really that important to compare the two. I will say that one came first. And then if you're doing bonsai based on a different culture background and then the bonsai is different, it doesn't say it's not Japanese aesthetics. You're doing something different. And then it's gonna be kind of, and then you have all those new things that you have to hash out, right? You got classic in a way. It's been tested for a long time. It's worked its way through all those little hiccups, highs and lows, fads and trends and all that stuff. And you got a style that's generally likable. It's like tuxedos never go out of style kind of thing. People have been wearing tuxedo for, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of years. I don't know. But it's a long time, right? Still looks good, right? For the most part, right? You can't beat a class. It's proven. It's time proven, right? If you decide to do something different, you run into those issues of you have to be understanding that you're trying something different. So you're going to run into those highs and lows and trends and trying to figure out what is it that we're really trying to do in that area. It's not, oh, it's different than Japanese aesthetics, so it's good because I'm doing my own thing. You don't get credit for that. All right. You're and when you're doing something different, there's going to be a whole slew of people who do things and it's going to fail, right? Until we start hashing it out and really fine tuning it and figuring out what is it that we consider ideal in that say side. Uh-huh. Uh, so so you don't get a pass because you're not Japanese aesthetics. You're different. That doesn't mean you win, right? Or you're doing good work still. There's a lot, it's confusing as hell, right? Because we're still hashing that out. If we're saying we're doing something, say American bonsai, like I'm fine with that concept, right? I was not that fine with it before, but studying more about Japanese aesthetics, I understand it more. I'm like, yeah, of course. Why can't we have an American version of bonsai, right? Because we think differently, or maybe it's not even American, it's just more Western, right? Because America's not a very old country. Most of our thinking is based on European thinking, right? So short of, unless you start, I don't know, putting horseshoes on as an accent plant, then you might say it's this Texas way of doing bonsai. I don't know, right? Or cowboy way of doing bonsai. You can come up with all sorts of categories. And this is not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing, but there's a lot of hashing out, right? People figuring out what is ideal for that, what is considered good. Just because it's not Japanese doesn't mean it's good automatic. Or you're trying something new, you get some kind of credit for that. People do new stuff all the time. They fail all the time. You just have to be real about it. That is going to happen, right? It's not easy. So have at it. I mean, I'm totally cool with that. And it made me appreciate it a little bit more, actually, and more accepting of it in the sense that, yeah, you want to try something new based on your culture and your aesthetic. That's great. Oh, that's maybe just not an aesthetic that I like as much as, say, Japanese aesthetic, so I just lean more towards the Japanese side, but I'm accepting of other styles. I may not like it as much as but I get what they're trying to do, right? Or uh, what whoever in whatever country is trying to do it.
Yeah.
Because you gotta know that if you're in Vietnam, their aesthetic's different. In China, France versus Britain, I don't know. Their culture is different, and it could be different enough that their aesthetics is different. In Europe, in a whole, maybe their aesthetics is a little bit more kind of close together, so it's harder to define the lines. But you go to Africa, and their aesthetics going to be different based on their culture, right? So now it becomes an understanding of, oh, what is that culture? In the U.S., it's tricky because we have so many cultures, right? It's all these blends. Yeah, we have Western mindset of thinking, but we have so many people from so many different countries. So it's this weird blend of things. So I think it's probably especially hard for us to come up with some kind of identity, right? Because there's so many people mixed in, and that becomes the identity, is that there's so many mixtures in there that maybe trying to figure it all out is super complex. I don't know. It's tricky.
The
Yeah.
US is also so much bigger than Japan.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. That's
you know,
right. Yeah.
Texas and Florida and California are
Mm.
very different areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. So you have all these little individual groups that pop out everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
It almost seems to me, though, that everybody in the US is doing some type of blend of Japanese and American aesthetics to
I
some
think so.
degree,
Yeah. I think so.
and some lean more heavily into Japanese aesthetics, and then
Mhm.
some are trying to discover what American aesthetics looks like.
Yeah. 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 And I think for me, it's really whatever style you're trying to come up with. Um, again, I appreciate the effort in that. Uh, good or bad, good or bad intentions. Say I appreciate the effort, knowing that all of us can probably come up with some kind of style, but not all of them are going to be appreciated, right? That's just how the world works, right? Again, you don't get credit for being different. For it has to have more than that, right? What what substance that it has that makes it something that we appreciate, right? That's really the core of the answer, not just being different. So I hope the folks out there that are trying to do something different, they're thinking, I'm doing something different not for the sake of being different, but because there's some reason behind this,
Mm.
and the real honest, good reasons for it, uh, as opposed to feeling special or some superficial thing, right?
For sure.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The concept of studying Japanese aesthetics is really interesting. And uh, I feel like tastes evolve over time and as you learn things. I remember, for example, for myself, I read Michael Hagedorn's book, Post Dated, when
Yeah.
I first
Yeah.
got into bonsai. And I remember him talking about Shinji Suzuki preferring really basic varieties of, say, ume, like single petal flower type,
Yeah.
and standard Japanese maples over like the really flashy ones
Mhm.
necessarily. And at first that was kind of foreign to me. Like I was like, I like the double petaled flowers,
Yeah.
and I like these flashy, uh, bright colored Japanese maples.
Mhm.
And as I've gotten into bonsai and I've looked at different trees, I have changed in terms of my taste. And
Yeah.
I think I appreciate more simple things now,
Yeah.
more simple varieties of trees.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think my tastes have changed.
Mm.
And I think that is a Japanese thing, a Japanese aesthetic thing. Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. In a simplified form, right? We're uh, to simplify it. I mean, to say that things that are not so flashy. Being subtle is a big part of it. Subtle to the point where just that little hint of difference is what you appreciate. It doesn't have to be this big fireworks show. Hey, I love a fireworks show, right? Who doesn't? It's pretty amazing. There are times where I love that, and then there's times where you just like it's just like sitting in your living room and it's just calm, quiet for however few I know you have
Mhm.
kids, right? You know, for whatever few seconds,
I
and you
wish I
and
did.
you and you just like, right? Like, maybe somebody that doesn't have kids maybe wouldn't appreciate that as much. They're just like, "Man, it's so quiet. This
Yeah.
sucks."
Uh-huh.
Right? And you're like, "This is great." Right? Isn't that weird how that works, right? So, and so yeah. I mean, you've I think you got on you're experiencing that, I believe, right? So yeah, just like at least for me, it's just exploring those concepts a little bit more and trying to understand it. I think generally there's a valuable lessons to be learned. I think in just personal growth, being happy about things, appreciating the little things, that kind of stuff. Uh,
Nice.
yeah,
What
yeah.
do you recommend any of these books? Is there like one in particular that you
Yeah,
found good?
it's interesting. Because I was recommended these books, and I was thinking to myself after I was reading them, I was like, surely there's other books. Like, it's not possible that I was recommended the only and best book, right?
Uh-huh.
What's the likelihood of that? And it's funny because so I I went on to I can't remember which AI thing. I just asked AI. I can't remember
Yeah.
if it was Chat GPT or something. Maybe it was Google's version. Uh, and I was like, "What's the best book to read on Japanese aesthetics?" And it essentially came up with these 3 or 4
Okay.
books that I got,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, "Oh, well, that's fortunate." Right?
Who sent them? Who told you about them?
These books?
Uh-huh.
A good friend of mine, Sam Edge, that does Suiseki. I
Ah,
think you know Sam.
maybe
He
he's a robot and he's
Maybe he's a
programmed
robot.
with
Yeah,
AI.
exactly, right.
Just kidding.
But he did a lot of study. He used to do bonsai, but he does a lot of suiseki, and he did do a lot of self-study on, aesthetics and trying to understand why the Japanese, display suiseki or why they like suiseki the way that it is, right? And, um, and so he recommended these books just as an insight to Japanese aesthetics in general. Uh, so yeah, I mean, if for those out there that are interested in stuff like this, 2 books that I recommend are one book is called The Unknown Craftsman. I think it was written in the early 1900s or so, and it has a little bit more to do with Korean ceramics, but it's great in understanding insight to Japanese aesthetics. Uh, Not a very big book, but trust me, you're gonna have to read it a bunch of times to really understand it. Uh, or at least it took me a while, right? And the other one, which is a famous book called The Book of Tea, it was written, I think, again in the early 1900s, and it was written by a Japanese guy that lived in the U.S. He was from Japan. He lived in the U.S., and it was his attempt to try to explain to Westerners what Japanese aesthetics was.
Ah,
It's not a book about tea, which is funny because that's what it says in the front of the book. It's not really about the tea. It's about uh, a little bit of history about tea ceremony and how that is uh, ingrained in their culture, how it kind of became a bigger deal, and all these little things that's used during that time. And it's very interesting because we think of like I use words like subtlety and quiet. And in tea ceremonies, there's some of that, but then the some of the ceramics that they use is not always so sudden. It's just subtle. I mean, uh, it's not always just like what we would think as, oh, it's like plain. It's not always that, right? It's something more to that, and I'm still learning all this, right? Of course. So those are 2 books that are really good. One of my clients I was talking to, and that he's really interested. He said that he talked to Bjorn, and Bjorn recommends this book called. I didn't really like the title because it reminded me of a PhD's version of Japanese aesthetics, but it's a real thin book, and mainly because it's a lot of big words that we don't commonly use. I think it's called a tractate of Japanese aesthetic. It's a very tiny book.
Hmm.
But I thought the use of that word made it more complicated than it
Yeah.
have to be, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And that was the tricky part I found with some of the thicker books, is that there's a lot of fancy words that actually didn't quite help really understand it. The thin books hit it on the mark more. So I don't understand why that is. But I talked to Sam after, and I told him about my studies. And I said, "Is it just me, or those thicker books, or they don't seem to convey the concept of Japanese aesthetics as well?" And he was like, "Yeah, I understand exactly what," and he's very educated, right? And he was like, "Yeah, sometimes it, because they get so technical about it,
Mhm.
and understanding Japanese aesthetics is all about not being technical about it,
Mm.
right? And so you're trying to explain something that's not technical in a technical way.
Mm.
You just lose something, right? You don't get the whole picture." So yeah, those are the kind of the ones I've been looking. I recommend those books for sure, and read it a couple times. I learn something a little bit more, or understand something a little bit more every time I read certain sections or chapters. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Awesome. Yeah, that's a deep subject.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't.
it's a
Yeah.
deep dive. Yeah, for sure. For sure. But it's fun, and I find that as I study more, and especially when I talk to people about it, and new things pop up, it's actually quite amazing how much of it's not just looking at bonsai and saying Japanese aesthetics, how do I style this tree? It started becoming Japanese aesthetics as a way of life in this whole process of, in this case, bonsai. And so it kind of, surprisingly, it became, I started seeing kind of it relating to not just the tree you're designing, but just the approach and the way of life of things. Oh, which is very fascinating. And I'm kind of seeing those connections more and more every time I talk about it,
Yeah,
which is really, really cool.
that is sweet. Awesome. Awesome. Oh, well, so
Back to technical questions. Any more technical questions? I can do technical very.
yeah, yeah, seriously. Uh, you know, so I guess it's interesting because we're talking about Japanese aesthetics, and part of me wants to know, what are all the Japanese aesthetics, or what are the rules, or what are the guidelines, or the principles?
Well, that's interesting, right? Because again, that becomes kind of this back and forth between uh how did they put it in the book? Anyway, I can't quite remember, but it had something to do more with, okay, breaking something down to understand it, which is a Western approach, or looking at something as a whole and getting a sense of it, which is more of an emotional approach. Now, in one of the books, they talk about it shouldn't be technical and then feelings. It should really be feelings then technical. Combination of the two is the best, but it's better if you start with feelings instead of trying to break stuff down.
Mm.
Because if you automatically start to break things down, you start putting up walls and this is right, this is wrong. And which is goes against kind of like Zen Buddhism in the sense that, which I'm not trying to say I'm an expert, but from my understanding, there's a lot of this breaking down of ego, duality, right, wrong, and them actually becoming the same thing, which is like, what? Right? How does that work, right? There's a lot to do with that. And, it's like you watch like movies. Uh, I remember, you remember the movie The Matrix? I watched a clip a while ago, and there was a scene where Keanu Reeves was going to see the Oracle, and he was talking to this little kid, and he was bald, and he kind of looked like he was like supposed to be reincarnated Dalai Lama kind of figure. And one of the lines, and they were holding a spoon, and the kid made a comment or was telling him that at some point you have to realize that you and the spoon are the same thing. And then in the movie, the spoon bends, and I had no idea what that meant, right? And I was like, "What? I mean, I'm not a spoon, right?" You know. But there was this deeper philosophy that that was in play that I didn't understand. So there's a bit of that, and so understanding that really did help unlock uh, uh, some of the Japanese aesthetic like approach is all these concepts that are so hard for us to understand, I believe. And so again, that's why I have to read it so many times. There's a great chapter in The Unknown Craftsman called um, Beauty According to the Buddhists, right? And what they considered beautiful. And it was such a great insight because when I was reading it, I was like, that's kind of what the Japanese kind of think of as beauty, right? Uh, so so it seems like it's just heavily influenced through religion in this case. And so understanding that is tricky. It's going to take a while. Uh, I find out that, and in my mind, I still try to do what you're trying to do. It's break it down. What are the rules? And it turns out that, yeah, there are some set kind of things to know. And for sure, but try not to get overboard with making it too technical.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's a whole other side of it that you blend with it to help you understand this kind of greater understanding, I suppose, or this enlightened, or as they would say, achieving Buddhahood, I think. Because everybody can be a Buddha if they achieve this form of enlightenment, of no ego, non-duality. Again, I'm not going to try to explain that because I'm still trying to understand it. But this versus that, yes, no, right, wrong, and then becoming really the same thing. I was like, man, that's hard. I'm so used to like, yes, no, correct, incorrect, 0, 1, 1, 0, right? That kind of stuff. So, uh, but I would say that if you get a chance to read these books, the chapters do kind of guide you along, and it gives you insight to uh, into these different areas that they're talking about. Is it kind of a step by step thing? Not really, but you kind of get a feel for the whole thing when you read it, and maybe that's how you look at it.
Yeah.
Because I can't make any sense of the technical PhD versions. It's so technical that it's like,
Yeah.
I have to look up half the words in the dictionary because I have no idea what they mean, right? Because they use really fancy words to explain something that's supposed to be, I think, more simple.
Got it. Well, I think that kind of leads into another question that I had for you.
Yeah.
So I think I've heard you say that we shouldn't, or we don't necessarily need to use Japanese terms.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like that? Like, for example,
there are some Japanese terms. If we're talking about aesthetics, because there are Japanese terms that we don't have an actual word for. People have talked about like wabi sabi, for example. Like there's no direct translation, but they have a word for it, right? So words like that, sometimes you have to use it because we don't have an actual word. What I meant by that in the past was like, we don't really have to use the word nabari. All that means is root spread, right?
To make it more complicated, more confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
Western.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you can say, nabari, that's fine. And I usually have to then tell people, oh, that means root spread in Japanese. But we're not in Japan. People don't speak Japanese. Again, let's be honest with yourself. Why am I even using this word? Is it to make it sound like I know something?
Yeah.
I'm superior because I know these terms? Yeah, I can memorize other words too, right? You're not special because you came up with fancy words, right? So again, words that there are no translation, okay, we can use that. But to overcomplicate, like I try to, God damn, bonsai is already difficult enough to try, I try to take a a more pragmatic approach to it, right? Uh, let's not try to make it more complicated. Yeah, if somebody says Nabari and we all understand, that's fine. Or you try to educate people, say, hey, that's what you might hear the word Nabari. It means root spread, right? Just for educational purposes, that's great. But when I start talking to my clients, I was like, yeah, the root. If I know you know what Nabari says and I happen to say Nabari, great. We know we're on the same page. But if I know you don't speak Japanese or you're a new client, I rarely would ever say that. What's the point of that?
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
It's root
for
spread, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just don't make it more complicated than it has to be. Some people will come up with terms for, what was it? What's the term for first branch? I didn't even bother learning it. It's
Yeah.
satieta, I think, is first branch. Is that what that is? People will say that to me, and I'm just like, shut up. You know, it's like, does it even matter? Because the Japanese term. What is it really? Again, if you really break it down, what is it really? I think again, I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody, but let's be honest with yourself. Most people say that word because it makes them feel like they're in the know. They're somehow superior. They understand this, or they feel they have a better understanding because they know these terms. I was like, nope, that's just gibberish in my ear because I don't know Japanese words, right? Or a lot of them. But I know what a branch is, right? Because we're in the US and we generally speak English. We all can say we know what a branch is. Now, you might say satieta means main branch, but we have a word for that too. Right?
Yeah.
So okay, the first branch. It's not
Key branch.
key branch. It's not technical, right? You don't have to make it fancy. So I think let's calm down, right? Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Very un-Japanese like the un-Zen Buddhism like, right? To have this ego, because that's what drives it.
Yeah.
Really. I'm gonna say fancy words so I sound more superior than you, and I'm the authority, and that's ego.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Which is a big no-no.
Yep.
And definitely a hindrance in you learning something when you have a big ego.
Mm-hmm.
You stop learning when you have an ego. I find that's one of the biggest enemies when I teach people bonsai. If they have egos, it's not that they're bad people. Some people have it more than others. You just have to understand that you have it and you try to control it, right? Because that ego will get in the way of you getting better at stuff.
For sure.
Because you just think you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of terms, disliking certain terms, I wanted to ask you, there's two terms that I don't love.
Okay.
One is bonsai master.
Bonsai master. Okay.
And then the other one is sensei.
Okay.
And
You don't like those words.
Yeah, I don't. So I think sensei is fine in Japan.
Sensei means teacher in Japanese.
Means teacher. That's great.
That's what it means.
Great.
Yeah.
But I just feel like that term has kind of lost some of its meaning because in the US, everyone calls everybody a sensei. And I think Napoleon Dynamite kind of there's Rex Kwon Do, and
Yeah.
oh, you're sensei.
Yeah. Sensei. It turns out, I think for us here, sensei means more than the teacher. It almost is like we think it means master.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a translation issue. In Japan, when you say sensei, this just means teacher. It's like,
yeah,
oh, I went to elementary school. I call my teacher sensei.
For sure. I just see like across several different hobbies, interests, like in jujitsu, which is, well, it was Japanese and it was Brazilian. Now it's in the US. Sometimes people call people sensei as a teacher. We should just say teacher.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's an interesting point, right? Why do that? Is there a reason for it? I do wonder if there's just doing that to keep some kind of tradition. Is there a bigger lesson in the use of that word? Some form of respect, maybe. I can understand that, right? Maybe it's maybe a different category than Nabari, you know.
Yeah. I think sensei is fine sometimes. It depends on when it's used and
Yeah,
who's using it, why you're using it.
yeah.
But I don't think I don't know. I feel like every martial art, it's sensei, even if it's like Korean, Chinese, or Japanese.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good point. Yeah, because sensei is a Japanese word, right? If you're doing taekwondo, for example, which is a Korean, that's Korean, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, a Korean martial arts. What do they call teacher in Korean? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't,
But I'm sure they don't say sensei in Korea,
yeah,
right? So,
I hope
yeah, yeah. That's an interesting point. I think thinking about it more, it might be something to do with tradition, and then yeah, and then some words just get overused, right? And I do believe that a lot of people say sensei as it became a word more as like master, or I'm calling you sensei because there's a form of respect behind it, and it seems like it's a grander word than
Mhm.
teacher when it originally just means teacher. Uh, yeah, bonsai master, on the other hand, which is I have a funny story about that actually. Uh, yeah, yeah. Who is a bonsai master? Well, I guarantee you that anybody that says I'm a bonsai master is definitely not a master, right? That's not something you give yourself. That's usually something people call you,
Uh-huh.
and you should probably take that with some humility too, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I feel like a bonsai master is someone that has mastered everything there is to know about the subject.
yeah, 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 and I don't think anybody would say they're that, especially the true masters, I think, would never say that. I would think they're smart enough or they're experienced enough to know that they don't know everything. And that's something they reluctantly people call them, right? And then you just say, okay. You don't fight it. They just say
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
It takes longer to try to correct it,
Uh-huh.
right,
That
than
makes
just accepting it.
for
Or
sure.
just say, okay, whatever. Um, but yeah, back to the funny story because I was talking to Mr. Tanaka when I was an apprentice, and we were just joking around, talking about if I ever had an apprentice in the future, what would I have them address me as,
Yeah.
right? And at the time, you remember Rusty, Rusty.
Yeah.
So he's a professor, so he has a PhD, and so we started talking about like English names of like master, professor,
Uh-huh.
those in college. A professor is usually a PhD,
Okay.
right? Uh, and we started joking about what we would have apprentices call us instead of say Oekata
Uh-huh.
or teacher or even by name, right? And I was like, yeah, he was like, yeah, I want them to call me professor. Or something like that. I can't
Mr.
quite remember.
Tanaka-san.
Yeah, exactly right. Master Tanaka professor, or something like that. It's sort of funny.
That's funny.
And we just kept trying to up it,
Uh-huh.
right? Oh, what's higher than a professor?
A wizard.
A wizard? Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Bonsai Mastered is just, like, woo-woo-y now. It's just, like, it's not what I don't know, uh, I just
Yeah, it's kind of said more in fun. It's just I think again really is like when someone introduces someone as a bonsai master, I think it's not even it's more of a respect thing
for
or
sure.
just trying to say, hey, thank you for coming. We 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 want to learn from you. We're gonna give you this designation that you
Uh-huh.
are the one that knows.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think that's really why people might say, oh, uh, you know, so and so is a bonsai master as they're introducing them.
Got it. Yeah, I'd much prefer high-level professional or something like that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing in bonsai, in That's why when I was talking to Mr. Tanaka, they're in Japanese when they talk about bonsai, people, right, professionals, they really it means when they call each other, they recognize each other as bonsai professionals. They don't even say bonsai artist. They don't say bonsai master. They say
Yeah.
bonsai professional.
I like that.
So I thought that was interesting when they said that. Yeah, it's like nobody goes around calling each other artists.
Yeah,
They just say, "Yeah, we're bonsai professionals. We do bonsai for a living,"
for sure.
right?
For
Kind
sure.
of thing. That's our thing. And maybe it's partly because their culture. Maybe they're just too humble to say something more than that. That seems like that's more like,
Uh-huh.
I do this professionally. Maybe you might say I'm good at what I do. I do it professionally, and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this grandmaster title,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, kind of ranting there.
Yeah.
What I feel like I had like some other big topics, but I almost
Yeah.
feel like we shouldn't get into those because they're too deep.
Okay.
Like I wanted,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, we can talk about it if you want.
Well, I also think my
It,
phone is gonna die in a little bit, but
okay.
so
Okay.
okay. Well, here I'll
Might be
give
a
you.
two-parter. So.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a choice. So
Okay. All right.
either I wanted to just talk about oaks as bonsai a little bit.
Okay.
I just wanted to pick your brain, and that is, I don't know, that's interesting because it's like you love Japanese aesthetics, but then I also know that you style a oak like a oak growing like an oak does.
Well, yeah, I think there's Japanese aesthetics involved with that too. It's not just a devoid of uh, aesthetics that I like, right?
Yeah,
Because it happens to be a oak.
for
I
sure.
mean,
You want to hit on that one?
yeah, we can talk
We'll
about
end
that.
with this
Okay,
one. Yeah.
okay, all right,
Okay.
all right.
The other one was more about judging bonsai, and so I think
Oh,
that gets
okay.
like very deep.
Yeah.
So
Okay, all right.
we'll save that one.
We'll
Maybe.
save it for next time.
Okay,
How's
we'll go. Let's go
that?
oak. I love oaks.
Yeah, I think they're great, and there's so many different oaks in the U.S. to work with. On the West Coast here, when we say oak, most of the time we think of live oaks, evergreen oaks.
Yeah.
In the Midwest, East Coast, when you say oak, they always think deciduous, right? Um, so I tend to not that I favor one over the other, but I tend to think of oaks as evergreens for us because a lot of them are here, but there's a bunch that are not, right? Oaks are great.
How do you style your oaks, generally speaking? Would it like describe the shape?
Personally, right now there are some, and I don't know if this is a fad, but this is just current right now. My thinking on it is that for oak trees, I tend to style them to look like naturalistic oak. So let's define that, right? What is a naturalistic looking oak, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time they could be multi trunks. A number of them that I see just out there, old ones, they're single trunk. They break up. It's almost kind of like a natural broom style, right? Single trunk comes out. It may not all break apart at one point, nor is a broom that way either. It could be in couple stages. It breaks off. It's not like your traditional, all of a sudden the branches are smaller branches, but they're fairly large trunks that they break into. So say one big trunk breaks into three mini trunks, and then they break into their own three mini trunks, and they spread out. And it seems like the really old oaks are almost as wide as they are tall. Like they tend to have a cap on their height and they start getting wider because they can't get taller.
Yeah.
Right. So it's real stretched out. I mean, we've all seen some examples of old oak trees where, like even in Japan, where they'll brace these black pine branches, right? They're so wide that they're going to snap off. And I've seen that actually it was in when I was in Texas years ago, I went to the Alamo. And there was a restaurant, the Alamo building. There's one building, and you can visit it. I can't remember what city that's in. Anyways, doesn't matter. It's probably in the city of Alamo. But apparently, the Alamo was this bigger thing. But the walls are all gone, and there's streets and stuff, right? And I remember there was a restaurant we went to, and in the back area of it, there was this giant oak tree. I can't remember what kind of oak, but they were bracing the branches just like they did in Japan. to hold these old branches that grew out and up and down and just so wide, but they're going to snap off if they don't get braced at this point. Which I was like, wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Right. Because somebody here looked at that and said, we don't want to lose that branch. Just like somebody in Japan said, we don't want to lose that branch.
Mhm.
Let's prop it up. And I'm like, huh, interesting. Right. So, I do like oaks style to look like oaks. I'm not opposed to them being styled to look like a juniper or anything
Mhm.
like that. Uh, I think I like them looking as oaks because one, I think a lot of us appreciate what natural oaks look like. We just are we're drawn to that.
Yeah.
We think they look cool. So why not make our bonsai look like that? I
We
think
also
that's a big
grew up
reason.
with that growing up.
Yeah, you see that.
Western aesthetics.
Yeah, well, yeah. And yeah, it's here, right?
Uh-huh.
And so, and then another part of that is that because a lot of us, when we get into bonsai and say we're taking lessons, and say we're working on a juniper, and someone says, "Okay, well, on these trees you should bend branches down to signify age, make pads and stuff like that." So we tend to be kind of on that. And in the past, we've ended up applying that to deciduous trees too, which makes them look less deciduous. They look like junipers, right? Or pines or whatnot, structurally speaking. Even though we know, and it could still look beautiful, but we know it doesn't naturally grow that way. But that's just a different form, right? Which is okay. We just got to realize that's what it is. We don't say it looks like a juniper, or I mean, it doesn't look like a real Japanese maple when it's all padded out,
Mhm.
right? It's some abstract version of it. So with the oak tree, I think right now I really like the oak shape mainly because I don't see a lot of it. So in a way, that shape is kind of new and and exciting, right? Oh wow, you got a mini version of this, what we know and love. Um, Now in the future, will that change? Will there be enough oak shaped bonsai or bonsai that looks like oaks? There's so many of them that we're just like, we get it, right? That's getting kind of old. We see it's so many. And then we look for something else, some other shape that we might then appreciate, which could happen because in Japan, for example, that did happen, right? Black pines in Japan, like bonsai black pines, don't look like that naturally. A natural black pine kind of looks like an oak tree. They grow tall, they grow wide, like those big arms that they brace, right? The last time I saw in Koku Fu, there's not a lot of black pines that look like that, right? They're single giant trunks, big bark with relatively small side branches with pads. You might say that, yeah, those trees that grew wide, they did kind of have these pads, right? But in bonsai form, it's a more extreme case of it, it's a more abstract version of it. But we found it to be beautiful, right? And so it's kind of gone with that. You might see some kind of their when they have black pines, because black pines are ingrained in Japanese culture too, right? You see those prints or on doors, like in houses, the abstract, pine shape,
Yep.
right? They still don't look like bonsai, right? In a way, right? They're more reminiscences of what we think of as like a garden bonsai, garden black pine.
Uh-huh.
They kind of have this kind of leaning trunk or whatnot, and these real separated pads. It's not real full. And again, bonsai is not even doesn't even look like that, or at least black pines in bonsai. So I would argue that at some point after we get past kind of all these oaks looking natural, I think we just don't have a lot of them looking natural yet. But once we do get a lot of them, I do think that we would still really like them. I don't think they'll go out of style. But will it then lead to people saying, right now it's the new thing, kind of newish, so everybody's on board. 10 years later, 20 years later, some young guy is going to be like, Peter, you old bastard, right?
Yeah, we've
You've
done
been,
so
yeah,
many
you've
like
done
that.
so many like, I want to do something different
Yeah.
because I'm young and I don't want to listen to you, right? And they make it look like a juniper, right?
Uh,
And I'm gonna look at them, I was like, I've seen this a million times before,
yeah.
right? Japan has experienced this 40 years, 50 years ago. Uh, they decide to change something new, thinking that it's new, and it's just a different style of it, right? And that became the norm, popular style. I've seen some oak style to be like a juniper, and they look good. I mean, a lot of trees look good, deciduous, conifers, when it's all padded out.
Mhm.
There's something about it that does look good. You can't deny it. You can argue, you can say it doesn't look natural. Sure, it's not like the real thing. It's an abstract version of the real thing,
Yeah.
and sometimes so abstract it's like not even the same thing. But it's a style that we like. We appreciate it, right? So can oaks go through that? Sure, absolutely. I think it can. I think right now we just don't see a lot that are in that naturalistic kind of look. And again, just to define what is the naturalistic look, trunk that breaks apart, or at least some natural elements. Because a lot of the oaks that I develop tends to have a single trunk and they still have side branches. But I do try to stretch them out. I try to have them be fairly large branches. That helps, not skinny branches. And a canopy that is real dome shape,
Mhm.
tall, not tall, but it's almost like a square shape, if not even rectangular. A rectangular in the shape that is wider than it is tall. That feels like an old oak when it's wider than tall.
Yeah.
So going for that kind of look.
You know how it has kind of often one main trunk and then there's other trunks that come off of that main trunk,
Yeah.
and they can be at the same spot or they can be at different spots,
Yeah.
and it's almost like big giant branches, but they're more like trunks.
They're more like trunks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the next time you get a chance to look at an oak tree, you can maybe do some measurements and get an idea of kind of proportions, right? Uh, if the trunk is, I don't know, 2 feet wide, when they break apart, are they like each 1 feet wide?
Yeah.
Whatever the case, whatever that number is. Uh, and you can maybe then copy that, right,
Mhm.
to get that proportion right.
Yeah. It seems like, well, I guess I'm wondering, do you think that some reverse taper in those spots where
Oh
there's like
yeah,
multiple
yeah,
trunks is kind of
yeah. I
okay
mean that
almost?
that becomes yeah, and that's one of the more fundamental things, right? When we first start in bonsai, we start trying to figure out all the rules, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, reverse taper, that's not a good thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But you know what? When you have three trunks growing from one trunk, it's going to have
For
reverse
sure.
taper,
Yeah.
right? But nobody complains about that when they see a big oak tree and
And
say,
it
hey, it's reverse
looks kinda
taper.
cool, yeah,
Yeah.
almost.
And it's acceptable because that is the way it is,
Uh-huh.
right? When you have a tree that breaks apart and it's still beautiful, right? It breaks apart and you have three massive branches growing from one point. Of course, it's going to swell. But it's not considered reverse taper in the traditional sense because that's what it's going to do. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
It's not like this tree grew funny. That is what it will do if that happens, and that's what it did, right? I think for like reverse taper, when we see in bonsai, we think of like if it's a single trunk and there's no apparent reason why it should swell, and then there's a swell, then it looks a little funny because
Yeah.
there's no reason for it. But when there is a reason, it's now acceptable.
Yeah.
So it's not automatically reverse taper is no good. It's reverse taper with no reason is usually kind of weird, but with reason, even if you have a single trunk and you have a giant main branch coming out of it, it's always swollen there. Also, it might not be so crazy a reverse taper, but there is a swell there because when you have a big branch growing off the side of a trunk,
That's what
it
happens.
always swells.
Yeah.
But it somehow looks okay,
Mm.
right? We don't sweat it, or at least we shouldn't sweat it because that's a very naturalistic thing.
Mhm.
You can't, there's no avoiding it. That's just the
Yeah.
way it is. So, so yeah, that's, I think that's very acceptable, expected so-called reverse taper, and that's not considered a bad thing at all. Of course, that's going to happen. And I would say that for those that are developing oaks, and you say you have a single trunk that say breaks into 3 trunks, just remember that happened one time. That's not the only time that happens on the tree. It's going to happen again on other parts of the tree. So continue that pattern.
Sweet.
Right? You don't have to start going to 2, 2, 2 only or blah, blah, blah. It's like if this is what the tree does, you would expect to see a repetition of that. Right? So incorporate that. It'll look more real if that's what you're going for.
Nice. What type of movement would you suggest people put in, or do you put in to branches?
Some of the movements that I like, especially on the big branches, tend to be like it's very interesting to see those crazy movements. Not all oaks do that. Like it's a zigzag almost. It's just like wild. It tends to look best when it's on the older, bigger branches. Nobody wants to see a zigzag on a little tiny young branch.
Yeah.
Like it makes no sense, right? Young branches are not old enough to even experience that. And how did a branch go zigzag? Well, it's not one branch that just got bent. It's a branch that grew, a side branch grew on it, and that took over, and the whatever original straight part is now gone. And that's a series of growths that made that zigzag pattern, not a branch that got bent, right? So it shows the age, and it's interesting because it's these kind of abstract lines, right? Generally, the flow is going outwards. I don't always go with the crazy bends, but I appreciate it, and I know I can get away with it. Say, for example, you're developing a branch, and it's time to work on it, but this branch got away from you, and it's growing straight up, right? And it's too thick to bend. It's like, well, in other trees and other styles, you're like, oh shoot, can't bend this branch. I gotta cut it back, grow a new branch, replace it, wire it when it's small. But on an oak, the cool thing is that straight might be something you would normally see in that oak. So you can take advantage of it, even grow it thicker, then cut it, get the line to then change, and now you have an interesting pattern that is distinctive to oaks, right? Now, if it's one weird zigzag and all the other branches don't do that, that looks odd. So you got to kind of, it should kind of all go together. If you're going to have zigzags here, it should have zigzags there, and so forth. You should see a theme. Just like if you don't have any zigzags, then keep it that theme. Because there's a lot of oaks that just grow up, they spread out, they get to the end, and they kind of cape down a little bit, or they bend down slightly, right? And then the top branches do the same thing, except it's at a different level. It goes up, out, slightly down. And that looks really good too. So it's really your call and what kind of tree you're trying to do. The up and out is very soft, kind of delicate feel. When you have those strong branches that have those zigzags, it tends to be more kind of in your face kind of looks like, wow, you're kind of looking at, wow, look at the craziness in this tree. Look at those big branches. And you're like, yeah, some of them grow that way. And that's what you're trying to show. I think both versions look fine.
Yeah.
It's just what you like. And you can do both. Right? Now, okay, maybe don't do crazy branches if the trunk's like this little skinny twig. Maybe it's more appropriate to do the soft kind of flowy if the trunk isn't very masculine looking. But if you have a big, powerful trunk, can you get away with these crazy bends? It seems to match. So I might follow that. Right? It makes more sense, at least,
Sweet.
to do that.
Sweet. Yeah, are valley oaks pretty tricky to work with? Do they get fungal issues a lot?
I don't think they're trickier. They don't grow as fast as like a live oak, I find. They seem to be able to handle as much sun. I do notice that they do seem to get fungus very easily if you get the foliage wet here. Some people may not have fungus at all. Other people may have it all the time. I do notice, yeah, if you get the foliage wet, the likelihood of it getting fungus is higher.
Got it.
Versus like a live oak or something like that. So just keep the foliage on the dry side, or just make sure you're on top spraying. I have one valley oak here, and I spray almost once a month, and it's still got a powdery mildew. It just snuck in right in between the sprays, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, so you got to just be careful. So it's not just spraying unless I want to spray every week or something,
Yeah.
which I probably won't do. But now it's a combination of, okay, well, I'll keep spraying every month, but just they're a little sensitive to getting their foliage wet because that fungus might become a problem. So, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of oak trees here too, and they get fungus all the time.
Mhm.
And this year we got like late rains. We got rain in May, which
Oh,
is very unusual. That's like automatic fungus, right? It's
okay.
hot. All of a sudden it rains, so everything's wet, and then it got hot. It's like it's gonna happen. It's like immediate, right? It's like ideal for fungus to grow. So of course, right. So yeah, it can be tricky in the sense that you got to watch for the fungus. I think the trickier part is that the leaves are bigger, so you have to deal with that, and they just don't grow as fast. Usually, you get when you do the cut right now after the spring push, it doesn't grow that much more after. You might get a little bit on some case if the tree is strong, but it's not quite like a live oak.
Yeah.
So you got to take your time.
Mm.
And because it grows slower, that means if you're trying to thicken something, it takes longer because it doesn't grow as fast. So it's a more of a, but it's doable.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not doable. It's just a different, slower pace than the live oak.
Got it.
Some people might actually have more success with valley oaks because it grows at a slower pace, because you might have a valley oak that you can't keep up with. And then so you actually aren't getting it better because you're not keeping up with the correct, the work's not done at the right time. Branches look funny. You have to replace them all the time. So you're kind of chasing it all the time because you can't keep up with it. And then the one that's nice and slow that you can keep up with is progressing
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
That happens all the time with other trees.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And I really, really appreciate it. I would say we should keep going, but my phone's gonna die here.
Okay.
So
It's in the red.
anyways, appreciate you so much, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Thank
so
you.
you're so good on podcasts. I love
Oh, well, thanks.
listening to you rant and rave.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. You're very wise, very
Oh,
intelligent,
thank you.
super
Thank you.
talented when it comes to bonsai, and I love hanging out with you and picking your brain. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeremiah. Thank you very much. It's always fun to talk to you about this stuff.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, bye.